Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our special council meeting of Monday, November the 1st. Our apologies for the delay.
My apologies for the delay.
Two councillors on the way, and given that I see we have a historic turnout of the public here today, I didn't want our councillors to miss out on any public commentary, as we tend to average maybe around 2 or 3 for budget deliberations, and now it's like, wow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 people in the gallery, and how many online?
2 right now.
Oh, 2 online. So, yes, so thank you to those who are joining us from home and your patience as we got started today. So I do wish to begin by formally acknowledging that we are meeting in person and virtually on the lands of the Sauk Nation, and the district is very pleased to be here and grateful for our relationship and ongoing work with the Sauk. So Council, I'd like to turn your attention to our agenda for tonight. And we do have a supplementary, which is a written submission here in the yellow pages or in your agenda notes. And so on that, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of the supplementary information to form part of the public Q&A. So moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Logans. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. And also just a notice that Councillor McMath is on her way in as we speak. Okay, so that takes us right into the public question and comment period. And so I would like to invite members of the public forward to address council on basically the one item that we have on our agenda, which is the budget. We ask that you please introduce yourself with your name and your municipality. We don't need your home address. That's personal information of yours that you don't need to share. And please just turn on the microphone, which is located at the base of the stem. And when you start speaking, it will be 2 minutes, and then we'll move through the audience in that order, welcoming first-time speakers to come up first. So on that note, welcome, and over to you. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Elizabeth Lang, Whiff and Spit. Does that count as municipality? I'm pleased to be here, and thank you so much for the opportunity. Handing out Halloween treats last night, I looked into the children's faces, their innocence, their trust. I was also watching the G20 and the COP26 meetings, saying that this is the last chance to reduce emissions before a vicious cycle is set in motion. 600 people died in BC this summer from the heat wave. This is just the beginning, yet we're struggling. It doesn't have to be this way. In this pivotal historical moment, we do have an opportunity to build a safer and net zero community. An economy ready to prosper if we make changes. Many of the world's big cities have already reached 30% reductions. Others will reach 50% by 2025. Towns and cities are getting the job done. So what's stopping us? We lack capacity. Look, we know you face hard decisions here tonight on behalf of all of us. But today, the decision is about balancing the long term with the short term. You struck a climate action committee of experts trained in policy, data, education, communication, psychology, agriculture, and health. You asked us to find ways to build climate awareness, paths to carbon neutrality, emissions monitoring, and policy recommendations. We will soon present a first draft of a step-by-step roadmap, a climate action plan for doing all of this. So your decision now is to invest in the first step in line with your strategic priorities and public feedback. Sauk needs 3 interlocking pieces: a data emissions tracking system, a strong communications plan, and a coordinator who can manage the plan and engage with Sauk face-to-face. Just like you go door-to-door to get votes, meeting people to get a commitment is critical. And so we've given you 3 options to keep these pieces intact. Please be wise decision makers for all generations. Take this first step for a secure future for us all. We're here to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lang. Other speakers?
Thank you. I'm Anna Russell, and I'm from Juandafuca. And on behalf of the Climate Action Committee, I would really like to thank Council for the leadership that you have shown on climate action in the time that I've been on the committee, starting with declaring a climate emergency before I ever arrived in Souk, to the point today where we have the 7% solution approved and recognition of Souk as a net zero community in our draft OCP. I also really want to thank staff for being a pleasure to work with and for rising to the challenge of the 7% solution and the engagement proposal that we have prepared. And I also want to particularly thank Councillor Bateman for his awesome climate leadership. I'm really proud of what we've all accomplished so far this year on the Climate Action Committee with all of you. But of course, we can't be done because we have a lot of beautiful plans, but we haven't actually cut any emissions yet. Climate action is for the long haul, and it needs to be a priority consistently. And climate action needs a strong foothold in our budget in the district because an emergency needs resources. It's just that simple. But luckily, something special is happening in Souk. Climate action was all over your budget consultations. Climate action was all over your OCP consultations. And people tell me, as a relative newcomer in Souk, they tell me this all the time. They look at the number of people who care in Souk. They look at the leadership we have on council. They look at your amazing staff team, and they tell me, if anybody can be successful, it will be Souk. I really want Souk to be among those communities that are successful. The Climate Action Committee is doing everything we can, and we're asking you to vote for the climate again tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Other speakers this evening?
I think we were sort of playing chicken, you know? Hi, I'm Susan Belford, and I live in Souk. First, I want to thank the Climate Action Committee for their incredible work and their very well thought out plan. That's doable. And I'd like to thank Council as well for having the wisdom and the vision to declare a climate emergency. The Climate Action Committee has returned a big budget ask. Yep, $266,000 is a lot of money. But then that's because Souk has a really big job to do. We need to implement the 7% solution, implement the Souk's climate action plan framework, conduct an accurate assessment of local emissions, create a carbon budget, mobilize residents to make positive climate choices as part of the 7% solution, create infrastructure to build in Souk local business development opportunities and teleworking space so that we can start to deal with that crawl that we have. It's a lot of money now. If we wait until later, it's going to be more money, and the work that we'll have to do will be even more daunting. So let's take this on for our kids, our grandkids, our great-grandkids. And you know, I did a quick calculation, and $266K is only $20 a piece. And, you know, just to be a little bit humorous, here's my 20. Does anybody want it? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Belford.
I'm glad I didn't have to talk through my mask. My name is Alan Dolan. I live in Souk. I'd like to thank the Mayor and Council for this opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'd like to thank staff for all the hard work they've done in getting us here. In particular, I'd like to thank the members of the Climate Action Committee, CAC, for all the work they've done on climate action. I'm here to support the climate action budget. I'm working with $226,000, but I'm $40,000 off from Susan. But anyway, I would like it to be twice as much. But it's taken a while to get here. It'll take a while to get there, and that's fine. I would like to support in particular the hiring of the climate change coordinator, because that position can leverage money. That position, there is all kinds of grants and programs out there at all government levels, and we need somebody to leverage that money. So there's a multiplier effect of having a climate coordinator. Just a word about taxes. So much of a budget time is about whether taxes will increase or not. We're coming close to an election year, so people are thinking about that. There's lots of people out in the public who seem to, that seems to be all they can think about is, will taxes go up? And I think in order to counteract that, we really need to demonstrate leadership. We've started to demonstrate that leadership through a number of things that have been mentioned, the declaration, the work of CAC, a number of things which have been mentioned. And I just think we need to continue with that strong leadership, because that's the way the public will know, and the public will support this addressing of the climate emergency. I will support that climate leadership in whatever way I can. Just a concern about the budget survey, and there was a bunch of engagement that was done around the budget. There were only 22 responses. I have some problem with one of the questions in that it basically has a, because I do this for a living, there's a question that was quite biased, and it basically said, for reference, 87,000 is a 1% increase, and yet none of the other asks in the whole budget survey put in those sort of very bold and blatant kind of references to how much money increases in taxes meant. And so I think, I guess as an engagement specialist, the methodology was a bit flawed, and I would hope that council wouldn't pay too much attention to that part of the survey in their deliberations. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. Anyone else this evening?
Okay, so it's on, thank you. Diane Bernard, 2018 Penang Road in Souk, and thank you very much for your time. I just want to acknowledge, like the previous speaker, we all know that between staff and councillors, everybody's working full out, and we appreciate that very, very much. And just to say that there are no, you guys know there's no easy decisions, and that it does come down to you. And I'm so glad it's not me making those decisions, but I get to have input into it, and that's nice and refreshing. Thank you. So I'd like to just point out that you do deserve lots of thanks, and I'd like to remind Council that you've already taken some very key steps in this era of climate change, that you've already declared a climate emergency. You've designated climate and environment as key goals of the District of Souk Strategic Plan. Where is it? There it is, right there. And that you have recognized the framework for making decisions through a climate lens. You've also appointed 2 highly credible climate action committees, and they have been very hardworking, credible members, lots of talent, and they have come up with a plan. They have come up with a means to get to what we're looking for, and they call it the 7% solution. And that I think that that's really quite amazing for volunteers. And as we know, it's high, it's intense, and it's burnout, those 2 committees. And they keep showing up, and they keep doing this. So, and you have also received strong, consistent public feedback throughout the entire OCP process in the Picture Souk, that climate change was very, very high and a big concern for most residents. It rated way up there. So I don't think that is, you're getting so many messages all the way through, and you have taken these things, and you've got good quality, high, reliable information coming at you from the Climate Action Committee. And I guess now we want you to step up and support them and follow through on their requests to give them some teeth in this budget so that they can move forward. I also just want to say one more thing, and that is that the mayor wrote a column in last week's Sauk News Mayor, and she rightly talks about her great work, or her and the council's great work with the Sauk Nation, and that is seen as a source of great pride. And then about the third paragraph down, and she talks about a vision of Sauk, and it includes a net zero community surrounded by ocean and forests. And that is a fabulous vision, and I think that it's there, it's clear, and I think that now it's time to put money to that so that we can all get to the same place at the same time.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Bernie Klassen. I've been the chair of this Climate Action Committee. The council has now had 28 months at least of unpaid volunteer time that has driven forward to the budget request we have tonight. Between the budget request we have tonight and the low carbon resilience lens that's supposed to be used from here on out, those are the two big tools for getting this town on track to a lower carbon future. The committees have worked extremely hard. We have had tremendous support from staff and from council, and I want to thank you all for that, and I would just like to see us all move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klassen. Do we have anyone else this evening? Call for any first-time speakers for a first time? Anyone for a second time? Any other thoughts? Okay, please come up.
Just really quickly, I have
You'll
a
need to
confession.
reintroduce yourself, though, for the record.
Oh, sorry,
Ms.
I'm
Belford.
Susan Belford, and I still live in Sauk. I made a mistake. I'm a bit dysgraphic, and so when I read those figures, 226, I swapped them to 66. So I apologize, and I just want to say, does anybody have change for a 20?
Thank you very much. So I think that covers everyone that is joined with us today in the public question and comment, and we do have the one written submission. So that moves us right into section 5. But before I do that, I just want to explain the mask, no mask piece in case you're wondering what that is. So local governments have been, as you know, we are an essential service. And therefore, we always want to remove barriers to the public. So as an essential service, the public has access to chambers and to the reception area of Municipal Hall without the requirements of a vaccine passport, because we're essential service. So because of that, the province or the public health order determines that staff and council, because we're not moving around, that where we are is determined to be workspace as well as staff as workspace. So while seated, we're free to take our masks off, and then as you can tell, we're quite spread out. However, members of the public can come and go as they please and move around a bit, maybe to see a screen or whatever, and so because of that, it's a masked requirement. So if any one of us were to get up and need hand sanitizer, use the washroom, get water, we would put our mask on to do that, but seated. So that's the determination, and we've received approval on our plans through the province, and that's sort of the way local government is moving forward. So I just wanted to make that explanation for those here and those online, because it does look odd, right? But just that's what it is. Okay. So now moving into section 5, and council, we are sitting as council, not as committee of the whole. So in this case, even though it's a special meeting, our regular procedures apply, where councilors have 2 times to comment, up to 10 minutes maximum. And then we also have our budget here. I don't understand that gesture. 5 minutes. Oh, okay, 5 minutes, members of council. Chair's asleep at the wheel again. So I just want to find a good process as we tackle this budget. So at our last meeting, staff came forward with their budget. We also received some information from the Climate Action Committee, and we were talking a bit about service level reviews and all of that, and it was sort of a lot to process. We saw departmental requests that came in, and so in the end, Council, I feel for transparency purposes, let's put it all in there and see what the number looks like. And I know, and I can appreciate our staff was a bit hesitant to do this because they're providing something that's like an over 17% tax increase. This isn't the wish of staff. This was council wanting to see if we put it all in there, what does it look like? And then from here, it'll provide a link as to why we are taking things out with an explanation. So we felt that would actually be a transparent process so that we can all follow what went in and why it went out. And so it was never the intent, I believe, of our staff to say, here you go, here's 17%, what do you think, council? It was more we said, okay, let's see what that all looks like. None of us here in this room, at least for council and staff, want to go to the public with a 17% ask. We know that there is still a struggle out there. We certainly heard that from our community partner, Sooke Family Resource Center, where their ask and the challenges that they're dealing with as they help our residents navigate the storm of mental health. We know that businesses are still not at full capacity. We know that we're still, as a province, only in phase 3 of the provincial restart plan. So we're not at phase 4 yet. And we know that there's a strain around town. Sometimes things feel like normal, and other times you know that there's pressure out there in our community. So we do want to deliver, though, the services that our community needs. We know operationally there's things that must have to be done, but at the same time, we also know that affordability is a challenge within our community. But that doesn't just mean that, okay, we take climate out, because this obviously impacts all of us today, every decision today into the future. So that's where I think we need to find some strategic ways to approach this. I'm going to look to members of council for sort of their wisdom on this, on what might be a good way for us to approach this tonight. I think a lot of us get a bit, maybe a lot of us, maybe I'm speaking for me, that when we start going line by line and 5,000 here, and like, line, like it starts to get a bit tedious and you lose sight of the bigger picture when you're working in that way, and then and that doesn't necessarily work either, because it gets tiring and then you may just throw something out that doesn't make the most sense. So I'm going to leave it at that. What I'd like to do is hear from every members of council just to get some opening thoughts on this and some guidance or some ideas on how you want to approach this. I mean, part of it was, for me, I had two options. Let's just do it. That'll go over well. Or we send it back to staff. But when we send stuff back to staff, what is our direction back to staff? We have to articulate clearly what that is. Part of it may be, okay, staff, you need to take a look at this. Every department, one by one, reprioritize, come back and make a compelling argument with what you need. It may be the case of, with recommendations that came from Climate Action, maybe already in your work, you're taking webinars or professional training on best practices and what you feel is already part of your work and your approach to doing work in our community. So maybe you might feel that there's a bit of a duplication there because you're already embedding something in the work that you're doing. Thirdly, the CRD has approved its provisional budget. Maybe there's some alliances with some of the work that the CRD is doing as a regional district, regional government, that we can actually piggyback and climb onto. And maybe that's an approach with some of the items in here. So I'll just leave it at that, but I'd like to hear from members of council on what your thoughts are. And who would like to go first? Councillor Beddoes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I guess what I struggle with is that staff are the experts, not me. So I rely very heavily on staff to come through with some recommendations. And I understand that, and I think everybody understands that 17.5 is just not going to fly. So I'm hoping that department heads will give us some options, because something is going to have to be cut here along the way, and some fairly big cuts, I would assume. So I like the approach. We do it by department, and we've got the heads here, I believe, and they can, at least for me personally, let me know what is the most essential, what can slide, and how that can happen, because I rely on you, and I don't think I can make some decisions on it, but I'd like to have an educated decision, and that's where you come in. So I like to go department by department and have the department head answer questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bados. Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I look forward to hearing from the leadership team. I think I always like a target at the outset, and I think if we as a group were to determine a percentage we'd like to work towards, that would help as we move through this process. I noted that the CRD board back in the spring asked for a requisition lift that would be equivalent, no more than the cost of living increase for this year. And the current year-to-year as of September was 4.4%. It's anticipated to be 5% by year end. And looking around, the City of Vancouver said we didn't want to see anything more than a 5% hike. Qualicum's, everyone's doing this, of course, right now. Qualicum's coming in at 3.5. Vancouver Island Regional Libraries come in at 3.84. Vernon and Squamish are both looking at 3.9. So I think it would be useful for us to determine a target number before we begin, and then that could help shape our conversation.
Okay, thank you. Others? Go ahead, Councillor Logans.
I would like us also to include discussion on alternate funding sources.
Yep, excellent. Others? Councillor Lajeunesse, St. Pierre, McMath? Lajeunesse?
Yeah, I guess I would like to ask staff and the managers of each department, is the way we're doing things, are there areas where we can shave some off of what we're currently doing because that's the way we've always done it, sort of thing? I know several years ago when I was working at Camosun College, our grant funding was cut. And all departments were asked to cut 5% off of their operations. And there was a lot of squawking, and it was painful for a bit, but after a few months, there were areas where everybody could kind of trim down, and it worked really well. And once it was done, there were efficiencies that were achieved, and things kind of leveled out. So I just wonder if that's something that staff could entertain doing.
Okay, we'll get to that later. Councillor St. Pierre?
I think that when I look at this, I'm reminded all the time that property taxes, and specifically residential property taxes, can't actually be something that's really going to take us into the future. There's too many expenses, and with a relative shortage of commercial and industrial properties in our portfolio, we really need to actually look at what we can do other. One of the things I'm very, very interested in at this point in time is, for example, as we heard from our chief firefighter or interim chief firefighter, we have challenges with actually retaining our volunteers and just retaining personnel. During that discussion, I was really intrigued by the idea that some communities have used of actually investing in real estate, investing in rentals, and then providing those rentals, for example, to volunteer firefighters on a subsidized basis, which helps with retention and could potentially provide a revenue stream. I would really like the district to be looking at what we can do in terms of alternate revenue streams, which more or less mirrors what Councillor Logans was, I think, getting to, or possibly getting to. Might be something different. But I think we need to be very creative at this point. There's a huge amount of work that needs to be done more or less immediately. The money is cheap right now. The work is possible right now. we have the staff right now, we have the plans right now. I want to make sure we do what we should and don't get necessarily, God forbid, a 70% increase, and I agree completely with Councillor Bateman on having a reasonable target, but I want us to be looking at the future, at the stitch in time that saves 9.
Thank you, Councillor St. Pierre. Councillor McMath?
I might as well, since everybody else did. Yeah, we are never going to approve this tax increase. It's just an exercise in public education, because we get a lot of inquiries as to why aren't we doing this and why aren't we doing that, and we can do that. This is just going to show you how much that's going to cost you. It's not feasible. We do need to incentivize commercial industrial, so that's something that we'll be working on. And then, yeah, it's all the pieces that we've touched on here. We're going to hear from all the department heads. They're going to triage items. They're going to give us their top list. And I love the idea of setting a target for tonight. So 3.5% to 5% sounds great. We'll hear what they have tonight. We'll send it back. I don't think we need to go through the minutia tonight. That's not what this exercise is for. It just, we'll go back to staff, who are the experts, to give us their recommendations, and then we'll go from there.
Great, excellent. So what I'm hearing around the table is sort of 3 to 5%. And we would like to hear from department by department. And then if there's an opportunity in there to pass any info on about an alternative finance funding source, maybe that's borrowing, maybe that's COVID funds, maybe it's advocacy, maybe it's something new that I haven't read about that was announced today. Perhaps, just to Councillor St. Pierre's point, I think that's a great idea. However, coming with a background from property management and real estate, that would be a hire of 3 people to make that happen, just with licensing requirements. So maybe not now, but in the future, it's because maybe there's something else, because that recruitment and retention is really important to all of us. Okay, so on that note, I think I was tempted, let's start from the bottom and work our way up. Simply because it's always fair to whoever's last in the alphabet, you know, because usually that's me because of Tate, but just, that would probably mess up everyone, so I won't do that. So let's just start at the top and work our way down. Ms. Gray?
If you don't mind, can I just start with a couple of slides first, and then I can hand it over?
Yes, you have a prepared presentation, so we obviously want to see that, but as our department heads are here, we'd like to hear from them too.
For sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, yeah, I just wanted to cover a couple things that weren't, obviously this report is heavy on the expense side, and I just wanted to quickly touch on a couple other items before we start the conversation about what will hopefully make the final cut of the 2022 budget here. So just a couple points to start with is for 2021, the overall property tax increase was 3.38%. That resulted in an increase of $46.34 for residents and $196 for commercial businesses. As a couple of the councillors have stated earlier today, CRD is announced or is seeking support for some climate funding of $1.7 million, I believe I've seen, and hoping to add that to their annual requisition. This is just coming out today, so I'm not sure of all the information around that, but that is specifically regards to climate. And currently, the updated number is $92,000 is equal to approximately a 1% property tax increase.
Mr. Gray, I missed that amount again, please?
92,000.
92,000,
Okay, so I just wanted to quickly touch on all the community sport that happens in the annual budget, because this section lives in the council's department here. So of the total budget in 2021, 3.5% of this funding of the total property tax collected went to what I would classify as community support initiatives. This would be events, which has a $10,000 budget for things like Celebrate Souk. Funding just came out of that budget. Sponsorships is another budget included in here, and last meeting council asked for a bit more information on that. And historically, over the last few years, sponsorships have been, there was a mental health awareness sponsorship we did in 2021, Coldest Night of the Year, Sukarama, golf tournaments, et cetera, have kind of been how that sponsorship funding has been allocated over the prior years here. We also have a Communities in Bloom budget, community grants, $65,000. There's $40,000 in line items being included in the 2022 budget. and as well $250,000 of service agreements in the 2022 budget. For the majority of the line items and service agreements, those, the recipients of those fundings will be presenting back to council after the election per the community grants policy. The timeline is now up for them to present information to council, and new council can determine if they want to continue funding, renew, any changes to services, et cetera. So those will be coming forward due in next fall. As well, I just wanted to touch on, there is, from our annual report, there was $303,000 of permissive tax exemptions provided to the community, and as well, there's $80,000 of council contingency that very often is used for community events that come up throughout the year or other sponsorships activities. And then I just want to spend a bit of time talking about other revenue sources. Thanks, Ebony, for Councillor Logans, for feeding that in there. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly touch on other revenue sources that we have in the budget outside of property taxes. And just highlighting this, you know, some of the things that I think council and everyone in Sooke is aware of. We obviously have lots of concerns with where the economy is going, inflation, interest rate changes. There's unknown changes to federal and provincial programs, and we're just not quite sure how those will impact the district budgets. So I was going to briefly touch on these. We receive every year a 1% utility tax, and those are funds from TELUS Shaw, and it's based on a percentage of how many residents or how much revenue they collect in the community, and we get 1% of that received in revenue. In 2020, that totaled $189,000. We have grants in lieu. We received $42,000 in grants in lieu this year, and this was for federal and provincial properties that don't pay the typical property tax. They pay what's called a grant in lieu, or PILT, a payment in lieu of taxes. We receive a small budget of $6,000 for administrating the school tax program. A couple of the bigger items in the sales and user fees is the boat launch revenue. The budget item was $15,000. That's been a standing line item for quite a few years. 2020, we collected $7,400, and in 2021, we've collected $10,400. Robbins Parking was a new addition to the budget in late 2020 and then into 2021 here. It has a $20,000 budget. 2020, for the partial year, we collected $6,000, and in 2021, we've collected $21,000. And that period just runs from May till, I believe, October. It ended as far as when those parking enforcements were put in place in Sooke potholes. A couple other funding sources we have would be government transfers. We receive a small community grant. Of the budget item has been historically $350,000 for that. There's a complicated calculation the province does to fund that, but basically once you're over 15,000 population, that funding should be reducing significantly. And so in 2020, we've received $324,000. In 2021, we've received $305,000. So the province, like some other fees, they use estimated population growths to calculate some of their charges before the official census comes out. And in February 2022, the next census will come out. If Sooke turns into a population of over 15,000, it just has impacts to the amount of funding we have to pay for our CMP. It jumps from 70 to 90%, as well the small community grant could be affected. And potentially some of the provincial or federal grants are factored on based on population as well. Usually for the federal, it's up to 25,000, so we have a bit of room for that, but some of the municipal ones, 15,000 seems to be their magic number of when funding will change. We have a small budget for the now defunct Climate Action Fund, where we would receive $1,800. We have a budget of $1,800. In 2020, we received just over $3,000, and that's for the district reporting their emissions for fuel usage, et cetera. Did I go to sleep? Thinking about it. Saving power. As well, we receive $630,000 a year. It increases slightly every year for the Canada Community Building Fund, formerly the Gas Tax Fund. This agreement is set to expire in 2024, and it's unknown what's going to replace that. And similar with the CARET program, there is potentially going to be some funding, but I can't budget for funding that if I don't know what this potentially will turn into. Another source would be the casino revenue. That revenue doesn't historically just come right into taxes. It's saved into a casino reserve fund, but as everyone knows, the casino's been closed. So for now, we've been supplementing this fund with the COVID Safe Restart Fund, but potentially when that funding runs out, it's an unknown how much the casino revenue will come back up. We normally budget $260,000 a year for casino revenue. Another item on here would be investment income. We have an annual budget of $210,000 for investment income. 2020 resulted in $363,000, and there's a similar trend happening for 2021. You know, there could be a bit of wiggle room for this budget to bump it up, but also we are spending, right now we have a lot of money sitting in our investments. So with capital projects happening right now, we will be expending a lot of those funds. So I'm cautious how much I'm willing, you know, I'd be comfortable increasing that investment income because we will have, you know, a few million less in investments for next year. And without knowing where the market's going to go, it's just so you know, there is potentially some room there for 2022, but I don't feel like based on the predicted spending for 2022 and without knowing where interest rates might go, how comfortable council would be increasing that budget too much. And then the last couple pieces were penalties. We budget $160,000 for penalties and interest, and we collect just over $170,000 a year in that. And the last category is license permits and others. And the biggest piece in there would be business licenses, which is $65,000 a year. And then the most significant piece would be the building permit revenue comes out of that budget. And so just on the building permit revenue piece, there's been some recent changes to the fees and charges bylaw, but they've not been in place long enough to determine how they will affect revenue going forward. There's been a couple big projects this year with the BC Housing Project, so that's kind of skewing the numbers a little bit, so I will be doing a bit more work. But there is a proposal to lift that budget $150,000 next year over the current $500,000 budget. As well, the upcoming DCC bylaw changes will be a crucial source of funding for our transportation master plan, parks and trails plans, and wastewater projects over the next few years. And because of that, any changes in the real estate market could have material impacts on district revenues. And a couple more points here, and then we can get into the expenses. I just wanted to touch on grants a bit. As we know, grants have been a great source of revenue for the district. But I just want to note that most grants have a municipal contribution portion, on average about 30%. So there would be a portion, and as well, some of them have stacking rules, so that means we couldn't use gas tax funding for our share of those. So just to keep that in mind, grants are great, but then there usually is a municipal portion that we need to find a funding source for. And as well, what I think staff and we need to do a better job of is when we're building projects, we need to consider like the longer term impacts of these projects. We have to now save to replace this asset at some point, or else if it's about acquiring parks per se, you know, there is an impact to operations and costs and staffing costs to manage that asset now. My last couple other points would be just to encourage council, I know Mayor Tate is all over this, to advocate for speculation tax and cannabis revenue, and as well to help diversify the tax base. I'll put my pitch in for the employment lands funding. I think that's a strategy that's important for commercial development, and as we know, we get higher taxes from commercial developments than residents, so I'm fully supportive of that request. And just wanted to touch, last point, is non-market change revenue is you know, a new source of funding that comes into the district every year. Council has supported in the past using that for the last few years for new positions that we needed, so I just wanted to highlight in 2021, we had 161 new folios come on board. That brought in $262,000 of revenue. 2020 was 137 folios for $278,000. 2019, 190 folios for $253,000, and 2018, 125 folios for $245,000. And so our annual budget is, I believe, $270,000 in there for that funding. So just highlighting that we've been kind of pretty much on budget for that funding source going forward based on historical information.
Ms. Gray, I just wanted to add one piece in the advocacy, is that it's more than this, than just cannabis revenue. The local government financial paper that went out, the three main areas were on attainable housing, community safety, and climate action. And so that's where there is an ask for a share of the carbon tax in addition to cannabis revenue, as well as all the other pieces that are in that particular report. So we're all over it since 2019.
For sure. Yeah, and then the last piece that is not included in the budget, just with the unknown, is the e-com costs that potentially for 2022 could be an $80,000 hit to the budget. I'm working with Brett on the details of their budget, and we'll fund that if it does come through, but we're hearing it may be delayed 1 year. But by the end of the day, if everything falls through, the final total for e-com costs would be $288,000 eventually, as they're eventually rolled into the ministry, into the municipality here. That was all I kind of wanted, I guess, to cover, just a couple items that we hadn't really talked about yet. So happy to dive into department conversations if you want to start at a certain department, or I wasn't planning on going through the PowerPoint from the other day, but I
No,
can
I'll
pull it
just
up if it has the
see-
same information.
Maybe just pause. Is there any questions on what's been presented so far? Councillor Logans?
Thank you, Ms. Gray, for your presentation and for your work on the budget in general. My question through you, Your Worship, to staff is in regards to funding some of our capital projects, perhaps through a loan, and what that might look like and how much can be funded. Is it smart to fund anything that staff can provide us on that?
For sure, through your worship, to Councillor Logans. We can, funding or borrowing is definitely an option for capital projects. There is, Mr. Carter's probably jumping at the bit here. There's a lot of high dollar, it definitely could be an option. Of course, then that commits us to certain funding. There's only so much borrowing we're allowed to enter into, which is 25% of our revenues every year. So there's a cap on that. I don't have those totals right on me today, but I can definitely get that information for the next meeting here and provide a bit more information to council on the actual limits for us. But there is some significant borrowing proposed in the out years for some of the larger transportation projects, as well as potentially the sewer project. That could eat up a significant portion of our borrowing power potentially. We're still crunching the numbers on all of this, of course, and waiting to see the outcome of today's meeting. But that could be a source of funding. If it's over a certain amount, over a certain years, we would have to get public approval for that as well. So just factoring that in. We've done some shorter-term equipment loans for some of the fire purchases over the last couple of years. So that's definitely could be an option we could consider. It's just, once you see the whole 5-year plan, you'll see in the out years there's some significant borrowing that will be coming forward for council consideration potentially.
Councillor McMath?
On the same topic, through your worship to staff, can you also provide us a list of current loans that we have that we are paying and what the interest is on for those? Thank you.
I can definitely get that for you.
Other questions from council? Councillor St. Pierre?
I was curious about the hiring of new staff. I know that generally speaking, it takes a while for those people to be found because we're looking for really good people and we have a good process, but it takes a while. Is it possible to, for example, look at our climate coordinator as one of the staff hires, while considering that we probably won't be able to get all those people within 6 months, or even potentially to delay hiring for as many months as it takes to actually get all the staff that we actually need?
So that might come more in the department by department piece, perhaps, when we hear about new hires, or just if you want to answer.
I was covering
now.
several departments, I didn't know.
Yeah, just any preliminary?
Sure, through your worship. We can definitely prorate, and the positions in there are prorated to start in March. as far as a start date, because realistically, exactly, if once job descriptions are written, posted, bum and seat is kind of how I go, when is this position going to start? Just to be fully clear and transparent, though, what that would mean, that there's only 10 months of that cost in this budget. So next year's cost would have 12 months of that. So there would be a bit of a, 2 months of, in theory, unfunded budget for that position this year that will now need a property tax increase next year to fund that, most likely, unless another option was chosen for that. So definitely we can prorate, and that's historically what we've been doing to get these positions in. So we're not saving money for a position that realistically won't have someone started for a few months into the year. But more details definitely can be provided as each department talks to there.
So, given that we can actually prorate, what I was curious about, which seems to be a possibility, is if we were to delay hiring, from March until a couple of months later for most of these positions, and so that might just happen anyway, just because sometimes we just have to wait that long to find the right person. Would it not be possible to actually pay for the climate coordinator, which we unfortunately we lost someone who was potentially taking care of that position previously, and I hope we can replace with a similar person who basically takes care of the CED, the community economic development, and the sustainability. But if we can't find that unicorn, I was hoping that we could potentially hire all the people that we actually need while pushing things back just a little bit in order to be able to afford it, and then the future years' new market growth could actually take care of that offset that you were describing.
At council's discretion, that's definitely an option we can consider. It just may impact, as you just stated, future hiring, because in theory there will be less, well, not in theory, there will be less funding available for those positions going forward.
Anything else? And just for the public, when we we have all these acronyms we refer to in local government, so it's always important just to keep a standing list. ECOM is the telecommunications service, so it's 911. And when you call 911, it's the person that picks up the call, and all of the software and facility and everything associated with those calls. The province just came up and someone reviewed it and felt that we should be paying our share of this and create a formula on how they felt it should go back to local governments, but they're only picking on the South Island, and that's why we're pushing back on this. We have a long-term agreement with the RCMP. We are the primary funder. This decision was made without local government in the room, even though we should have been at the table, so that's why we're pushing back so hard. But it was coming, like we simply can't absorb they said, oh, we'll phase it in. I'm like, no, I don't like the first phase either. We'll deal with it when the agreement expires and not now. So it's that whole upload the download, and that's what we're doing. So we don't get a lot of sympathy around the CRD because not everyone is RCMP services. So those that have their own municipal forces have already been funding this. So it's different in Oak Bay, Saanich, Victoria, Central Saanich, and I think that's all. And whereas it's the other RCMP and some that are working together on this. So they're hearing us, which is why it's stalled at the moment. So just wanted to give that because it's like, what are you guys talking about? Okay, thank you. Sorry, Ms. Gray.
No problem. So I guess if there's no other questions, I don't know if we want to just start talking to departments? Yes. I don't know if there's a preference for if there's any easier ones we want to go through first?
No, I don't think there's anything easy, so we'll just,
okay.
I would say just, it was that list that I had that I can't find now. So here we are, it just sort of starts, as I see it at the top, sort of just goes in alphabetically, well, not quite, because it's outside, and then it sort of goes, and I think it's just easier just to roll through it that way.
Sure. So one quick correction on there. The $5,400 being requested is from the museum, not from the Tourism Association. Sorry, I had this crossed in my mind there, so just a correction there. And that is strictly due to, they provided some information just due to increased costs.
Is there any way of having this Excel sheet where it shows the request and the impact on the screen? Perfect, thank you. Just so then not everyone has that handy. So it just needs to increase in font size somehow. If you can maybe just change the viewing of zooming.
getting busy now.
I'll stop. Okay, I think that's good. Okay, so this is where there was a correction. It's not CERT, it's the Sauk Region Museum. I did change it.
Yeah, sorry, my apologies. So the first few ones here, maybe we can just go really quickly because council has already made some resolutions on these. It's the $30,000. I just wanted to highlight that line item for the Sauk Family Resource Society. Council provided the direction to enter into a 2-year agreement for $30,000, and it will be funded with the COVID reserve. So just to highlight when that agreement expires, but most likely another funding source would need to be identified for that if council wishes to carry on with that agreement. I believe at the last council meeting, the information backup for the request from the Sauk Visitor Center was provided, and they're asking for a one-time lift for their service agreement based on increasing COVID costs. The Healthy Schools Initiative Council already determined to agree to fund that initiative. And then the various line items Council requested staff add. And the last piece is just the travel budget in the last year was reduced from the normal budget due to COVID and less travel restrictions. So for the 2022 budget, this has the travel proposed moving back up to the normal $30,000. And I will stop there if there's anything council wants to talk about for those
This is where you don't
sections.
really need to go line by
Okay.
line. I would just go department, blah.
Okay, so then the next one would be in the CAO section is climate action, and that is the $226,000 initiative. The details have been provided in the council report, and I will, do you want to talk to this? Turn it over to Mr. McInnes, who can maybe speak a little more to it.
And the details are in the budget report. It is a fairly detailed report. The big items, of course, is a full-time climate position. For $87,000. Data analyst, $20,000, and that is our contribution to a $40,000 9-month position through the Career Launcher Program. I can inform council that we have concluded our interviews for that position. It was totally unbelievably inspiring to see a bunch of young professionals that come out of STEM. We interviewed 5 people. We have made an offer that is into the Career Launcher Program for the last part of their due diligence. And if all works out, we'll have a climate action coordinator through that STEM program, or the Career Launcher Program, starting on November 8th. Incredibly talented young person that hopefully everything gets the thumbs up before the end of the week here, and we can make that announcement. So that data analyst position is part of the student that will be here for 9 months. The grant writing, $15,000, as was alluded to by some of our speakers this evening. Capacity building and chasing some grants, and there will be significant grants coming out, both federally and provincially, post the federal budget, and I'm sure coming back from COP26, there will be some new announcements. And those will flow through the province and likely through UBCM, like most others. $10,000 to continue our work with Denise Withers in the storytelling coaching consultant role. And then another big item is the campaign kickoff, which is planned for Earth Day 2022. $36,000 is an itemized list of things that are part of that program. $25,000 for rebates for heat pumps. $20,000 for modal shift rebates. Could be things like EV car inspections, e-bike rebates, charging station and transit passes. The details haven't been totally nailed down though, but just some incentives for mode changes.
Sorry, Yes, you could just call it point of order next time.
Point of
Okay.
order.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor McMath.
Greatly appreciated, but I would prefer that we just, like, top 5, top 3, because, like, we've read these things.
Okay.
And so I appreciate for public education, but it's available for people to review online as well, and they can see it here on the video, the pieces. But otherwise, we're going to be here until 3 o'clock in the morning. Right now, I would love to hear what are like the top 3 priorities for the Climate Action Committee, because we're going to do a lot of heavy chopping here.
As last year, the Climate Action Committee has not prioritized that list. Everything is a priority. It's the same issue that we ran into last year with that request from the Climate Action Committee. And maybe I'll defer to Councillor Bateman for further input on that.
Yeah, there are priorities. In fact, we have determined priorities, and you know, the Climate Action Committee would like to see the full ask reflected in the budget, and I think beyond that, I don't have much to say at this point. Okay, so top 3, Councillor Logans has suggested. I don't think we can just do 3. If you've read the report, if you had to.
List them on order then.
Okay, so here we go.
Point of order, maybe the
wait.
Climate Action Committee, if they haven't prioritized, maybe they can for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's going to happen
I
tonight
don't want
is,
to put it all on Councillor Bateman's
No.
shoulder to figure it
No,
out
well,
right now.
we have discussed this, so,
so I guess, okay, so let me just address the point of order and procedure here. So have you addressed it in a scheduled meeting?
yes. we have.
Okay,
Yeah.
so okay, because this is where, you know, it's like if a few counselors meet off-site in a room and share priorities and then say council has prioritized, that's kind of not fair because it was done in a silo without the rest of council. So I'm just asking, did the
Yeah.
Climate Action Committee formally meet, you know, have a scheduled meeting and come up and give
We have
3?
discussed
Or
this,
it's
yes.
all a priority is what you first said, okay? And so in this case, do you have top 3 or top 5? And if
Yeah.
not, then as our next step, we would be referring this back to the committee and back to staff to come back to us. And if you're uncomfortable saying these 3 or 5, that's fair too, because I agree with Councillor Beddoes, it's not fair for you now
Yeah.
just to make that decision on behalf of the committee.
Well, I'll just say, what I'm uncomfortable about is that the very first item we're discussing in any great depth on the day that the COP26 conference begins in Glasgow is climate action. We are, you know, I would be much happier to see, given the prominence of climate action in our strategic plan, in our OCP, in the actions that are underway at the district, and including the work that the CAC has done this year, that we shouldn't begin by taking our knives and our X-Acto knives to climate action at the very beginning. However, having said that, and given that it is in alphabetical order, and we've agreed to do that tonight, here it is at the top of the list. So, you know, what the Climate Action Committee would like to see is a full-time or half-time contract climate action lead, as was very eloquently stated earlier tonight. This is someone to get the work started on the implementation of the 7% solution. As one of our speakers said, there's a multiplier effect with that individual in place to find other funding sources. No question that there is staff time dedicated to climate action. However, to a degree, it's off the side of the desk, a phrase I learned early on as a counselor, and i.e., it's not job one for this individual. So climate action lead, either full-time or on contract as a half-time position, logically to begin when our climate action intern is complete. That contract ends in August. So that's number one. Number two is the climate action intern, the $20,000, which is the matching municipal contribution to the career launcher funding for this wonderful new individual we've got lined up. Number three on the list is the the climate engagement piece at $36,000. That was a menu of items developed by the Education and Engagement team in close affiliation with our communications coordinator. Number 4 on the list, and I'm not just going to do 3 because these are interconnected. The funding assistance, the grant writing piece. If indeed we don't have that staff person, that climate action lead, Mr. McInnes has a very talented grant writer he relies on, and we'd like to see some funding towards that. And then there are the carrots for public uptake, and these are either group purchasing programs or the rebates as described here, and the preference would be for the modal shift rebates. So, and then we could let go, as we move down the list, we can let go of the heat pump rebates given the there's a number of other incentive programs out there, significant ones. The Telework Center pilot can be let go, given that the Community Economic Development Committee is in the new CED strategy. Telework is a central piece. And CRD climate action at $5,000. So we're looking at there, if we have those. I'm not sure I'm presenting this as well as I could have, but in response to Councillor McMath's request for specifics, those are the specifics above and beyond the 2 funding alternatives you see on page 13. I think if you look at, so how's that?
Can I ask a
questions?
question?
Yes, please.
What happened to the story coaching consultant?
I missed that. The story writing consultant, yes, is number 6 on our list here.
It's interesting, because I would have put that at number 1. I was captivated by the presentation that talked about early adopters to the laggers and everyone in between, and how I kind of look at it as peer mentoring or peer-to-peer, where, hey, I've done this and this works and I want to share the story. And then others say, hey, that's a great idea, it wasn't as difficult as I thought, so maybe we should consider that. And I thought that sort of leading by example, where residents are already doing something and sharing that out in our community, to me, I felt was, we definitely have to follow that.
Yeah.
So maybe this is where I'm not following things right, but that's...
That was an oversight on my part.
Okay.
That was the key being, the consultant's critical, of course, but more critical is, A, direct dedication and attention. If we're going to kickstart this thing officially next year, given, timelines and building carbon loads, the feeling is we need to get started now. And that climate action individual on district staff or via contract, and then the education and engagement campaign funding, because there is already a very substantial amount of work has been done to get us to this point. Yeah.
Questions? Okay, we have a few. So Councillor Logan's, then Beddoes, then St. Pierre.
I missed as we were going through it. I'll be quick.
No, I know. Jeff, turn your mic off.
Oh, sorry.
This is a question for Councillor Bateman, just real quick. Those top 6, what's the total dollar ask for them?
Well, if you were to, let's add all this up. Well, if you look at the full-time climate
Ms.
action...
Gray has that already.
$188,000.
188. Okay.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre.
I just wanted to note that while considering this, and I do agree that maybe this is, I don't know if this is the process that we wanted to be using, because I was under the impression that we were going to be looking at this in a big picture and then potentially sending this back to staff with some specific asks in terms of trimming things down. In this particular case, I think that we don't actually have, unfortunately, because this is what this particular ask is for staff that's actually associated with this to actually send it back to. So we're left in the position of maybe having to do this work.
This goes back to the committee. So it's a case where we send it back to staff. There's sort of two things, I think, with this, is to send it to staff and to the committee. So part of it is, if the committee feels that, why I'm saying both, is that we also internally need to understand how this fits in with staff and their capacity to absorb and deliver. So part of it is, with new positions, what we need to know is which department does it fit into, who's their reporting, who do they report to, where will they fit in the office, what, if any, renovations need to be needed, what equipment, like, that, you know, all of that. So having a body is fine, the building is full, where do they sit, and where would they, which department? So there's that piece, which is why it needs to go through to staff. Some of this might be, okay, they're going to see, okay, you know what, we have this type of grant writer, blah, 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 that'll work. We can absorb it in here or not. So it doesn't need this or that. Maybe it fits somewhere else. I don't know. That's where staff has to fit into it. And then I think with the climate committee prioritizing, it's like, okay, if we need to prioritize, this sequence will actually work. What do you think, staff? So it kind of needs to go committee, staff, back to council. It needs to go to both.
Okay. So moving with what I was going to say further, I think that the plan itself has a lot of synergies involved, and we have to be careful about pulling out pieces that shouldn't be pulled out. So I think that's where we need to be careful with the work the Climate Action Committee has done. So, for example, I do recognize that the heat pump piece, at least as far as I'm concerned, is unnecessary. Having said that, I think that the Wayfinder function, to actually direct people to the heat pump rebates and actually help them in terms of filling out the forms and finding out where to go, is extraordinarily important. Helping people with energy audits and figuring out the return on investment and giving them that little extra push with information is extremely important. $350, not so important. So I think there's savings to be had in some areas, but in terms of synergies and how this works together, I think we definitely need to take it back to committee. And I think we have to be very, very careful about anything we try and pull from that, because it has been well thought out. So that would be one thing. The other thing I would like is a question to your worship to staff. I understand that this year it was a record-breaking year, unprecedented in terms of grants, due, I think, in no small part to basically shovel-ready projects, work being done to prepare for grants coming up. Mr. McInnes has implied that we could be looking at some grants coming our way, or possibilities of grants coming our way from different levels of government. How useful is it to actually have someone available to keep their eye on things, make sure that we're shovel-ready in terms of climate work? Is it the same sort of situation? Are we definitely leveraging as has been implied? Because I think that's important to know.
Mr. McInnes?
We're not ready. We're in the process of being ready. We do have the two major pieces now, which is the modal shift and the energy efficiency. So those two things are the things that we're preparing for, to look for grant opportunities.
So, if I'm not mistaken, that sounds like having someone on hand to handle any other opportunities would be useful?
Yes, ultimately, you know, if the plan comes together as it looks like it's coming together, but it still is fluid. We heard some new things at the last Climate Action Committee about new things continuing to roll through. So we do need a more solid picture of what the plan is going to look like for 2022. So personally, what I'm looking at is the 7% solution. So the modal shift and the building efficiency work as really where we're going to be looking for money to help make those shifts, people that own buildings and need to change their transportation mode.
Thank you.
Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, so where do I begin? This is, to your worship, to our CAO. We're one of 13 municipalities working on this very same problem. And we're looking at a climate coordinator. Have the other municipalities are looking for their own climate coordinators, or is there some saving if if we did go down this route of a climate coordinator, that we'd partner with the CRD, or we partner with some of the other municipalities, because I hear things that there's not a solid plan and that things are coming down. Nobody really knows where we're going. I don't know, I could get some feedback in this, but, for a full-time person, I just wonder if that might be better shared and more efficient if we did it with another municipality or the Capital Region District.
Your worship, to Councillor Beddoes, as Ms. Gray alluded to, new information just came out this afternoon from CRD on their bylaw 4468, and they're looking for concurrence from municipalities to move that requisition from $468,000 in 2021 to, I think it's $1.7 million in 2022 and beyond. And that is for a number of things, but certainly to coordinate work across the region with municipalities. Haven't had a real good look at the considerable amount of information that came through this email today, but there are those opportunities, and it looks like CRD does want to step up and play a leadership role.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of, I'm reading between the lines with things coming down with the province, the feds, and the CRD. And the Climate Action Committee, I don't want to knock them because they're very hardworking. But I sometimes think that maybe we might be a little premature till we get the proper information to see where we go from here. I don't think there's anybody in this room that does not think we're not in a climate emergency. But I think we do have to be prudent, and I would like the staff to look into those possibilities and come back with some report how we can have some, get our cake and eat it too, by sharing that position. So, or if it's feasible to share that position, maybe it's not, I don't know. Again, you guys are the experts, and I'm asking for your help on this.
Okay, so what I don't want to get into right now is us taking stuff out of this. We got a sense of what is a priority. I think when we now say, send it back to the committee with some direction, the chair and members of the committee are here, so they're listening. What I'd like to hear from council is just, when we say send it back to the committee, what do you want them to hear from you on this particular budget? So for example, I'll start, okay, so with this, again, I feel the storytelling is important, because when I hear things like Vancouver's doing this and Saanich is doing that and Squamish is this, that's wonderful, but I want to know, well, who is doing what here in Sooke, and I think they should showcase and share their ideas because it's relevant to where we are. Vancouver's a big city. I don't connect with that. I don't connect with Victoria or Langford because we're uniquely diverse on our own. But I hear a lot of great things of what residents locally are doing and how they did it. That's why I think the storytelling locally from our locals is really important, because then it's like, well, gee, my neighbor's done that. I see many neighbors of mine with solar panels and they're harvesting rainwater, and I'd like to hear more about how they do that and what that looks like and what sort of plants they have that are more, so those are good pieces. In terms of others, I struggle with giving a rebate to an e-car. I will get behind giving someone a public transit pass, though, because I'd rather see the packed bus, and to me, an e-car is just another car clogging up the traffic. It's great that they're not giving emissions, but every other vehicle behind them might be. But if more people got onto public transit, I could get behind that, because it's transit. In terms of the telework piece, I know that our CED committee is working there, and they have a sustainability piece. So I think there's a synergy that could happen there, and that's where I think it's more important to have more departments working together on the same piece. The fleet assessment, I kind of see that's out. Some of the vehicles we need to replace, the technology isn't there, but when staff bring these items forward, I imagine that we'll see these new possibilities with fire trucks or larger vehicles come forward. We already saw that with bylaw and an e-bike. So, we're sort of seeing those pieces there. I would need to, seem like that's where the storytelling, will it fit or need a different place in the kickoff campaign? And the grant writing and the missions reporting, I sort of hearing now that more of the grants we apply for will need to have that potentially tracked by our staff. So is that a webinar or continuing education that our staff are going to get for that? So do we need a position? Would that help or not? Or is it just going to become an expectation of our staff? So that's why there's some more information that needs to come. I'm not quite there with the incentives for heat pumps, but again, I need the storytelling piece. Because I hear some that are like, well, we've invested in a 30,000 heat pump, and I think, wow, affordability is a challenge for our families. So how can I tell them you'll pay more in taxes so your more well-off neighbor gets a benefit from you? Yes, there's energy savings that pay us all the time, but that's where I still need the storytelling piece on that. And then with the CRD, you know, they're doing a big, massive requisition, so I think it's okay that we don't give them more, rather we look for energy there. And then that's where, with what has been announced, and you know, and I sit at the CRD. I'm not on the Environment Committee. I follow at a high level what they were doing, but I'm on 4 other committees, and I chair one myself. So I just look to my peers around the table for their work on it, and I endorsed that recommendation from the committee. But I know there's a lot of work in there. I know some directors were disappointed and had higher expectations, and others were still not on board. So it kind of met in the middle, but I think it's a good requisition there, and that's where maybe we can see, because it's the case where at that table we're all arguing, well, all roads kind of, we all come from all over into the CRD building. We have to start working together on parks. We've done that well. Transportation, housing has come a long way. Hospitals has come a long way. We need to build this in, and we need to work with everybody so that everyone in the region is together, because residents that live here work there, and they're all over the place. So that's just some comments from myself. Anyone else have some comments to go back to the committee? Councillor Loggins, please.
Yes, it sounds like you may have your mind made up on what you want to see for climate action. There were some pretty strong
Those are just
points
comments
in there.
on, you know,
Okay, I
what I
hope that's the case. I do agree that we need someone focused and dedicated on climate action. I am very confident that our staff will be and will continue being and will have even more engagement in the future in training on climate action, and that's important as well. But it's not their job to be focused on it. They have to be focused on other things and have someone to go to for creative ideas or to keep us even in line and remembering that climate is a focus of ours. I don't like the attitude I'm hearing around the table, which is someone else is doing it, so we don't have to. I don't want us to rely on the CRD and the province and other communities to do things for us. And with all due respect to those who think that what we do in Sooke will add up to nothing, that's not a mentality that I think many people in our community have. I think it's one of action, and they want to take part in this, and they want to be a part of the solution. It's not often we have people in chambers for our budget meetings, and I realize that most people here are from the Climate Action Committee, but they're people who are in our community, and they're sitting here tonight and watching online, and these people are begging us for a 2.5% tax increase. When does that happen? Never. People don't come to us begging for tax increases, especially for an added staff person. So I'm glad Mr. Klassen spoke about the 28 months of work, because it's hard to remember how long, how much effort has been put into this. But we have the expert advice, and it's not perfect, and that's okay. It's like we're sitting here as council expecting these human beings to come back to us with the exact solution to save the world, but that's not the case. So I would like us to really move on to perhaps another subject, come back to this, at least leave this for now. We saw, based on our last discussion, that 188,000 covers the main asks. Perhaps that's okay for this year, and we can revisit it next year, but that at least still includes the coordinator and main functions of this plan that has been put together. And it goes with the motion we made at one of our previous meetings. Again, we don't have to cut anything tonight. It is 2.5% of an 18% tax increase. So to me, this should be something we don't even, like, there are bigger things in this budget we need to look at right now.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying we're not cutting anything. It's just I wanted to make some comments so the committee would know what I'm thinking, because you can't read my mind, you know.
Same here.
So,
And I just want us to go forward with the mindset that we can make change and we can do something and we can act on this, not let's let someone else do it.
Okay, other comments? So I see Councillor McMath.
Again, we're going into way too much detail. Tonight is not about debating the priorities and that we do none of it and we wait, or we do all of it right now. That's not what the forum is for tonight. It's a very high-level overview from the department groups and heads, and in this instance, the chair of this committee is here on council. So moving on, it's not about cutting anything from this group right now. It's 17, 19. It's a huge percent. We need to knock it down. If we had to, what can go? What has to stay? And that's what we're looking for tonight. There's no debate. It's just an education. It's just a presentation. And then, because you've already spent like 35, 40 minutes on this one line item so far. So we're just going through debates, not for tonight.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, but we're giving direction to the committee, so they need to have a sense of, because they've already put their proposal forward, so.
Sure, so the
that's
generalized
where-
direction for committees and department heads is that we are targeting a 3.5% to 5% tax increase only. What is the high-level overview? What are your top 3, 5 priorities? And then going back, not diving too much further into it, and going back, and from a financial standpoint and an impact, what does that look like?
Okay, Councillor Beddoes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few simple questions. One is, I would like the Climate Action Committee to give me a little bit more detail what a kickoff campaign looks like. I'm not sure, and that's $36,000, so that's getting close to 0.5%. The other thing is, when I did make my request to staff, I didn't feel we should offload anything to the CRD. I just thought if there was a partnering opportunity where we pay our fair share with the CRD for this new position, it might be beneficial. I don't know. I'm waiting for staff to come back with that. Other than that, there's some things in there that I do like, but I would like to more flesh out the kickoff campaign, what that looked like, and the possibility of sharing something with the CRD. Thanks.
Yep, Councillor St. Pierre.
When I was hearing Councillor Logan's, I was reminded of something that we weren't able to get into at a committee of the whole, dealing with the budget, and that was some of the feedback that we got from the community, and this was also extraordinarily surprising. So we have a pie chart on page 64 of one of these documents that shows that nearly 3/4 of the respondents on the budget were interested in seeing resources either reallocated or considering a 1% to 2% budget increase in order to actually pay for climate action. It reminds me also of family services coming forward and how we know damn well that mental health and health should actually be in the provincial jurisdiction. That's where the money should be coming from. But not all the money is going to come from there. And because it's such a big problem, we all have to basically partner together, put in what we can, work together, be a part of the solution. So I think that let's just be a part of the solution and recognize that, for example, in this particular case, no one's ever had this problem before quite this way, ever. So this is a new thing under the sun. We're having to start with nothing in the budget to deal with something that we really have to deal with. So obviously it's daunting, but this is actually a relatively well put together plan for something that's brand new under the sun. And so I look forward to getting feedback from the committee. I also look forward to us showing the community that we're actually connected to this stuff. When we actually got to go to conferences, one of the best ones that I attended had a presentation on how do people actually feel connected and satisfied with government. And the answer was when they feel heard, when they feel connected. Community amenities are more important than maybe having more money in your pocket. Being able to actually socialize with your neighbors is more important than more money in your pocket. All the money that we put into economy doesn't necessarily do much compared to actually connecting. people are not going to be able to connect with us unless we recognize what they want. The OCP and everything else is making it very clear. People want to be a part of the solution. We're part of the solution. Local government is a part of the solution. So let's figure out what a reasonable cost is. I don't know about the heat pumps myself, just saying. I really don't know about that one. And I agree with Councillor McMath and Councillor Beddoes. Let's look at this stuff carefully. I agree with everyone, actually. I think we got great comments. But let's keep in mind that we have to represent, that the community has to feel connected with government, that we're the easiest level of government for them to connect to. Okay? So let's be there for them.
We get that, and I just want to share, we also have other committees with asks that are doing really good work as well. So that's where we have to bring everyone together to avoid duplication, and the CRD is a partner of ours. They're employees of ours that live in our community and service from our community. So that's why I consider them a partner. Okay, so we're going to move off of this, seeing nothing else, and we'll move into the next item here,
Can I
which...
just quickly-
Oh, sorry, Councillor Bateman.
Close out with a note that there is a discussion of a half-time contract climate action lead, which would take that number down from 188 to, I don't know, 45,000 less. I don't know, but down into the 140s. And, yeah, I just close with one of the comments. In the package, I requested that those additional materials be added. Councillor Beddoes, there is a breakdown of the kickoff campaign for climate action, itemized.
Yeah.
I must have missed it.
So you missed that, but that's
It's
okay.
there. He just
It's
wants to
there.
hear more about it.
Yeah,
We've all seen it
understood.
there. Me
Yeah,
too.
and you too, and, yeah, yeah, so just that, one quote. If Sooke is serious about the goal of green and net zero, as repeated in many documents, this would be the moment to demonstrate that. And to just recognize that this is the first time in the municipality's history where we've actually put a substantial budget request for climate action, direct climate action, into the budget. So I'm curious, are you asking the committee to come back with further input?
Well, that's what we're doing, is we'll be sending it back, not tonight. It's send it to the next, back to the committee. They've had an opportunity to hear from members of council that chose to speak on this, and we'll see what, if anything, can be removed. And if not, then we'll receive that back and make a decision at a later date. And then we'll hear from staff about what their final ask looks like.
Right.
It should flow through staff and then come back to us.
Now, just in terms of process, we don't meet again until end of November.
Then
Do we need a special meeting to discuss this? Because I know first and second reading of the 5-year plan is set for November 22nd, I think.
But we're sending this back to staff, and we'd have to find another meeting date, so that schedule is going to push out.
Okay,
So be it.
got it, thank you.
Okay, if it moves, it moves. The ability to find dates for council to meet isn't easy, number one. For the committee to meet and have the support of staff may or may not happen, and their availability is another factor. So the schedule may have to move. It already has. It's the reality of it, or we just endorse the whole thing tonight. Stick to the schedule. I don't think that's a good idea. Okay, I'm just going to, instead of going back and forth here, advertising. Is there any more information that council needs on advertising? It seems pretty straightforward to me. There's legislative requirements to advertise.
Sorry, Your Worship, we missed the community active engagement piece for 20,000.
So I did. Okay, so we'll just finish advertising because we're on it, and then we'll just not have to come back to it. We're all good? Okay.
Sorry, those are not the legislated required advertising.
Well, zoning bylaw amendments is it not?
Sorry.
Through your, I believe that zoning bylaw is regards to the OCP and changes, specific communication regard to changes in the, potentially recommended in the OCP. So it's a different, it's not for normal reports that come to council. This is specific to the OCP and any advertising and engagement for any bylaw changes that need to occur based on the hopefully soon-to-be endorsed new official community plan.
Okay.
So it's a different from regular zoning advertising that we need to do.
Fair enough. Okay, good. Questions? Anyone? Nope. Okay, backing up to Community Act Dev, engagement, employment land strategy.
Your Worship, that's under the Office of the CAO. I have responsibility for community economic development, human resources, and communications. To Councillor McMath's request, the top three items in the Office of the CAO are the climate change, the community, or the economic land strategy, employment land strategy, and that's just building on the 2019 economic analysis that was done by Urbanics. So we've got 2 areas of employment lands identified in the draft OCP. So we really want to understand the servicing requirements and the marketing needs for those lands. So as Ms. Gray said, we can get some non-residential growth happening in conjunction with the residential growth. And then the advertising is around communication and engagement for the things that are in the plan. So parks and trails signage, and then things that come out of the OCP, the policy work that is going to be necessary. So it's the engagement piece around things like the zoning bylaw amendments that have to happen. So those are the top 3 things in my department.
Okay, questions from members of council? You can come back to it at the end. We'll move on now. Okay, so corporate services.
Thank you, Your Worship. The increased $9,000 for membership, that's for our agenda and minutes software and our legislation software, and that's just a general increase in our cost. The election, it looks like a big number, but as they only happen every 4 years, it's not funded annually in our budget. $24,500 is our normal budget, and we are asking for extra $14,000, and that is just general increases over the previous cost based on a 2% per year increase. But there's $11,000 of that for voter view software, but that can be taken from the COVID restart fund, so there's 1.11% you can have back. And then we would also like to rent new machines. Our ballot machines that we have are from 1996 and will only be serviced 1 more year, so we'd like to rent new machines. And then subscriptions are the FCM, UBCM, LGMA memberships, which have just gone up in general cost. And minimal one for bylaw, which we can live without, as my number 4.
Okay, thank you. Finance.
Just a cost, insurance costs are increasing, so it's just requesting a lift to reflect the actual cost of insurance. And cyber insurance is a new piece, which is approximately $8,000 a year for the district.
And I'll just share that a few municipalities have been suffered extreme impact of cybersecurity, where all of their information was ransomed off and I think locked up, and even their backup site, and then ransom, I guess they had to pay so much in Bitcoin. I don't really know particularly, but it shuts a municipality down. Our IT has been ahead of it though, and I know that with all the backups to backups and this and that and encryption and so forth and everything, we're in good shape. So I was a bit concerned at first, but concern has been already addressed. They're well on it. Be very careful what you open in emails. One email can make its way through and go all the way through a system. So just be very careful with attachments. Call the person. For everyone, you have to be careful. And the 2-factor authentication, I know it's a pain sometimes. You need to have it on your devices. Okay, moving on.
Okay, just quickly on IT, again, it's just a small ask for increased costs. And I forgot to mention earlier in response to Councillor Lejeunes's comment about just overall ask each department to cut 5%. Part of the issue is historically that's what's happened with district budgeting over the prior year. So there is not a lot of fat to cut in budgets, and that's part of the issue is why you're seeing a lot of these small dollar increases, because we've been trying to manage these, and eventually we would like to just, this is what insurance costs. Like, so do you want us to cut something else? And besides professional development or staffing, there's not a lot of bigger ticket items that we can find in the budget to cost, or to reduce, to come up with savings. But it's definitely something we have a conversation on every year. So just wanted to add that there's not a lot of fat to trim, unfortunately, in the budget. So it makes it difficult when the biggest percentages of most budgets are staffing and professional development, are the two pieces. And that's it for IT.
Planning.
So with the approving officer position being filled, there was that one-time 70K request. What we're asking for is an additional 10 to move forward, just based on input that we've received through the OCP process regarding a neighborhood area plan, whether it's Kaltassin or a review of the town center plan. The other piece is just the completion of the OCP and some what we're calling specialty items, so print material, things like that. We certainly had an enhanced engagement and print material campaign with this OCP that was a bit above and beyond what we had initially anticipated, and that's just through seeing completion next year as we move forward through with the adoption. And the OCP item does come off next year from the 75K that was budgeted from 2021.
In terms of the $80,000 budget for the neighborhood land use plan in either Kaltassin or Town Center, is that something that could be put off? Because I think that as we address the OCP and how that impacts households on the ground is going to take some time, perhaps, and for residents to get on board. So there's a time where people do get tired of yet another online thing. I kind of just want to know what's happening. Tell us more about what you've done. So I wonder if that's something that, does it need to happen that next year? Maybe it's part of the next council's set of priorities of, we need to address the town center and figure out how to incentivize, and depending on how the OCP is adopted, I wonder.
So this was a piece that we were looking at just based on engagement, and also along with the employment land strategy, just looking at all those economic opportunities. As you know, there's still quite a bit of vacant land in the town center, so a lot of questions have been asked through the engagement process about, what can we do? A review of the plan seemed timely since it's over a decade old now, that this would help kind of complement and further work on the implementation process that's coming out of those action items of the OCP. This was coming through from the public as kind of that clear next step that they wanted to see, because we were going to be having such a large focus of all that growth being concentrated in the town center area.
Okay. Questions for council? See nothing? Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Through you to Mr. Pallo, do you have a sense, an intuitive sense of when the OCP will be complete?
Ideally, we were still targeting adoption to be spring of next year.
Okay, thank you. Just on that, though, the part for where this council is at is we need to focus on the finish, marking the landing. For us, that's sort of June, because there's an election coming, and whether we like it or not, that's the reality on the ground. So that's where things shift all the time. It certainly impacts our work, and it certainly impacts where the mindset of the community is. And so that's where kicking that, I'm not sure. Just something that, okay, now we're going to launch onto this as you head into an election. That outcome could dramatically shift the OCP and that whole strategy. So I don't know that late spring, early summer is the time to start marching in that when the community has an election ahead that it's going to be needing to deal with. Whether they like it or not, we're hoping people come out and vote. It's kind of important, but 40% do, so, but that's where it all is. Their campaign signs come out, all of that. So that's where it's just, when we look at where we finish our work, we have to wrap it up, council, and then as that, our direction to staff wraps up too. Like, we're kind of tied together in that way. So something to think about. Okay, engineering.
Thank you, Your Worship. Very difficult to bring everything together at once, and when asked to prioritize things, I can tell the story, I can put stuff into perspective, so it will assist council in ultimately making some tough decisions. The things I have forward for budget consideration, there's financial opportunities and there's financial consequences. Most of the stuff that we have on budget for operations and engineering, there are going to be implications to the entire community, environment, the climate, as well as safety. And it's really important that there's a thorough understanding of the stuff that we're bringing forward. Okay. I'm going to break it into two categories of this 17% sort of budget that's in front of council tonight. There's one section that's going to be operational maintenance, and there's one section that's operational capital. So when we talk about the operational maintenance stuff, it's a 2.5% increase. I'm going to go through 3 to 4 main items in there, which consists of that 2.5 increase, and suggest that what I would be cutting when asked to prioritize these things. Of that 2.5% increase, there's a $20,000 ask for consultation. That's for me to work with consultants on the DCC development. That's going to require necessary updates, minor ones and major ones, going through 2021 or 2022, so that we can get the DCC's program to where it needs to be. It's the first stab at it with the one that's going forward to adoption right now. There's another big ask, which is kind of a once-off for this year. It's a $200,000 ask for rainwater maintenance. Ultimately, what's going on is the CRD is replacing a whole bunch of critical water lines in Whiff and Spit area, replacing their AC mains. They're going underneath 12 of our main culvert systems. All those culverts have no bottoms on them whatsoever. So when these water lines are replaced, if there's no budget for us to act and replace these culverts immediately, what will happen is the water will run through the bottom of the culverts where they put their water lines in, potentially cause sinkholes in other areas. If that happens over the winter of 2022, there could be cost implications upwards of $100,000 to $200,000 just to fix those repairs temporarily, and then the culverts will need to be replaced as well. That is one that I would cut out. Going forward with another $20,000 ask for asset management contribution.
Sorry, Mr. Carter, did you say that was what you would cut out?
This is that is correct. That's what I've said, because this I'm going to go over the stuff in operating maintenance and capital. Those are the difficult decisions when asked to prioritize some of these things as to what we would cut out. That would have to go because there's other priorities that are taking precedence over that, and that's the difficulty of this budget. Going forward, there's a $20,000, and this is all consisting of a 2.5% increase. So one was the consulting to get the DCCs where they need to be, $200 for culvert replacements in the Whiff and Spit area. There's also going to be an asset management contribution of $20,000. That's to facilitate a $60,000 grant opportunity. We have an application in with FCM right now. If we don't make that contribution, we can't get the grant. It's going to be hard to bring the asset management program to finalization, to bring forward to council policy options for reserve funds to basically replace the existing infrastructure we have in town, which we do not currently have in place right now. Last ask is another one that I would cut. It's a $25,000 summer student ask for the engineering department. Well beyond capacity right now. We would cut that unless we could find someone that was a returning student. We do not have time to train someone in the position. That's how bad we're at capacity right now. It would have to be someone that was either returning or could hit the ground running. Those asks right there are a 2.5% increase, and you can see the difficulties with trying to prioritize something like that. We're going to go into the capital side of things, and with the capital, I'm going to go over 5 key items in this. This consists of approximately a $4.5 million budget ask. Of that $4.5 million, there is approximately $525,000 of that $4.5 million, which consists of the 5% tax increase. The other $4 million in this ask are funded through other revenue sources that Ms. Gray has put together. And I'd just like to say it's very difficult for the operations department, because these asks are not specific for engineering and operations. The majority of our stuff consists of design projects. They're all in alignment with council's strategic plan, and they're by implementing these master plans. When we do these capital projects, and most of them are focused on a lot of the key corridors in the District of Sauk, it's huge climate action lens focus on the implementation aspect of these things, environmental lens, sustainable infrastructure, it's for transportation, utilities, and parks, and it also has implications on public safety and emergency services. When we put in these corridors, emergency services can respond quicker. When we put in these corridors, it's safer for the public. There's less emergency calls out for people potentially getting into accidents. From a climate action perspective, I'm going to touch on a few of these items as I go through these 5 asks, but I'd request to be challenged on how other aspects of these projects are actually relevant to climate action initiatives, as well as an environmental lens. So, $4.5 million in these capital asks. 5.5% of that is for a tax increase, and that's for about $525,000. The rest of the $4 million is funded through other revenue sources. Starting off with one of these asks, $285,000. That is basically for material acquisition on the Ministry's highway project, where we would be acquiring over $1.5 million worth of material. It'll be $1 million savings to the community. All this material will be repurposed off that highway project into the District of Sauk and be utilized to implement these corridor projects. Greenhouse gas emission reduction, we've calculated 200 metric tons of greenhouse gas reductions just from this one capital ask. That is bringing the material into Sauk as opposed to it going to Ministry pits over 40 kilometers away. Next ask, $700,000 road program. As I've stated before to council, the road program money focused on capital project implementation, as well as taking into consideration opportunity costs with the paving that's going on the highway. From a climate action perspective, getting in on these paving rates right now, excellent. They're also mobilizing an asphalt plant in Sauk at Butler's Pit. If we pave any other time in large amounts like this, the material is going to be coming from asphalt plants outside of town. This $700,000 ask will give us the opportunity to pave some of the critical roads that are falling apart in some of the rural areas, including primarily focused on Connie and Manzer. We can get into rates that'll see $600,000 paves for those entire roads, completing all of Connie Road and the bottom part of Manzer Road. If we do not engage in these this year, the road's falling apart. We may be subject to $100,000 to $200,000 in minor repairs to go patch these roads. They will fall apart in the remainder sections of the roads, and the patches will give out eventually as well. If we don't take advantage of these opportunities right now, the $700,000 that's requested right now could be $1.2 million going forward in future years when we see double the rates. This is an opportunity cost one that's very important. Annual patch and pave, this is a $100,000 ask. I would kill this one, but essentially what this does is if there's anything over 4 or 5 inch potholes that are within our road maintenance contract, we don't have any extra money to address these things, anything outside of the road maintenance contract. A little bit of trimming outside of a ditch line, going further for a little bit of maintenance, repairing that extra pothole or paving these small areas that are falling apart. We can't engage in any of those things under our current maintenance contract budget. Small ask, but I would cut that one out. So 5-year road program, $700,000. Annual patch and pave, I'd cut it out at $100,000. Material acquisition, I would not cut that one out at all. That's an ask of $285,000. Phillips Road design. Right now, there's a $100,000 ask for that. We're fully engaged in the design of almost $30 million of the transportation master plan infrastructure that we've engaged in 2021, and there'll be carryover budgets to progress these designs in 2022. Tying the design in for Phillips and the Throop Road connector, absolutely critical. The ask for this $100,000 is basically to extend Phillips Road design going up to the bridge and including an additional assessment on the Phillips Road Bridge going into Sun Rivers. There's assessments done annually, but to me, they're not just good enough. We need to assess that further. We don't need to go do repairs on a bridge that may or may not need to be replaced, but we need to assess it further to find out what's the best way for us to spend money on it. Do we go forward with some of these recommendations from our annual report saying go spend $500,000 on doing some repairs on the bridge? bridge, or do we plan to put in a new bridge? We need money to analyze that further, and without that ask, I can't do that. Without that ask being approved, all I can tell residents is, it's been requested. We have no money to do that right now, and it's a hard answer to give. West Coast Road active transportation. There's a $100,000 ask in there. Right now, we were very fortunate. I advocate a lot of stuff with the Ministry of Transportation in alignment with two of our sewer main projects going from Otter Point all the way down to the wastewater treatment plant. We've engaged in the ministry right now that's given us a design partnership where they're contributing $80,000 where we're completing active transportation design, including sidewalks, trying to facilitate some of the boat parking along the highway, as well as having large enough shoulders for bike lanes, and that's going from where the highway has left off their project all the way down to Whiff and Spit. That's what's going on today. Going forward, there's going to be a lot of potential projects from the CRD and some potential sewer projects that may realize some construction going from Souk River Bridge all the way to the town center. This $100,000 ask is so in conversation with the Ministry of Transportation, they potentially will partner with us again on getting a design in place going from the bridge to the town center roundabout in anticipation of being ready for when some of these major infrastructure projects, the CRD water line supposed to go from the bridge to Church Road in 2023, potential sewer lines with some of the feasibility studies we're working on could realize sewer projects coming from the bridge. Having these active transportation designs in place and making the best out of the partners with the ministry, we won't be able to afford them unless we have grants, and we can't get grants unless the design's in place. Another very important one, but that again, I would cut that out if asked to shave up the budget a bit. Big ask for operations, and we've been very strategic on this, is a $3.1 million ask, and that is to complete the Church Road roundabout. That project, we have a $500,000 grant we were successful with as well with the ministry. Of that $3.1 million, $375,000 is earmarked right now in the financial plan to fund that through taxation. That's equivalent to an approximate 4% tax increase. So of the $3.1 million, 4% tax increase is asked to fund that portion of the project. If that is passed and accepted by council, and when asked about how we structure our loans strategically for some of these big projects, as council gets to look at the 5-year financial plan for consideration, you'll see that we've strategically placed back the Throop connector as well as the Phillips, which won't be on the financial plan at this point, because these projects are substantial. They're realizing costs of upwards from $8 to $12 million. And when asked, how do we fund these projects? Roughly a $12 million project, $10 to $12 million, will have to be funded through DCCs, as well as through taxation. A 4 to 6% tax increase will basically fund a $12 million project for our taxation component over 25 years. The ask this year is 4% for church. If that's approved, that 4% tax increase generates that $375,000 roughly every single year. So if approved this year for church, going forward in the following years, there is that $375,000 that's already earmarked and been accounted for. So, say for example, we ask for a $10 million project next year, a loan could be taken out for that. Of that, the partial payment would be paid for by DCCs coming in, the other part would be paid for by taxation. The 4% already approved this year for church roundabout could be earmarked for that project going forward in the future, taking out that loan for $6 million and paying it back with that $375,000 annually. Very difficult decisions. That's a 5.5% tax increase for capital from operations and 2.5% from our operating maintenance budgets.
Thank you, Mr. Carter, and I just wanted to share that you've already found substantial savings just with the synergy that you have in working with the province and getting the designs together and advancing so much work. The material cost is a significant savings already, and some of this other, so yeah, not easy. Councillor Logans, then Beddoes.
Thank you very much. That was the coolest thing I've heard all year. It's very exciting, isn't it? I think it's exciting. Raise the taxes, quote that. But this is where I really look to council and say, are we looking at the same budget? Because when y'all said, let's do a 3 to 5% tax increase, I was like, they're not looking at the same budget that I'm looking at. Where do you, no offense, but how do you think that's going to happen? And, I mean, to be fair, if it's higher than that, I think that we have good cause, because it sounds like there are pretty exciting things happening. It's really nice to hear that a lot has been already figured out. It's nice to hear that some things can be cut, but again, when I'm looking at this budget, I'm seeing a lot of percentages that have to be there, and we don't really have an option on whether or not they're coming out. And also, they benefit the community so substantially. So what I'd like us to consider is how we're going to communicate all of this information to the public so that they can understand what's happening and realize that these are some really amazing things that people have been asking for a really long time coming to fruition, and that it is saving so much, like millions of dollars in the long term. So just something for us to consider.
Okay, questions, Councillor Beddoes?
Well, just another quick sort of observation is that when we went to the public, there was two areas that they would agreed that increases are necessary. And one is Operation Roads and Underground Services, and the other is Operation Parks and Environment. Those are the only two they indicated they'd like to see an increase. There's scary numbers, and I never ever agreed to hit a number of 3.5 or 4%. You have to see everything before you even come close to making a guesstimate on what we could live with. This CPark did 7.1%, and we didn't bat an eye. It was necessary. So I think we're in for a larger increase than we've seen previously. But again, I agree with Councillor Logan's that if we do go for a higher increase than 3.5 or 4 or 5, whatever it is, we really need to tell that story. And the thing is, we now have a communications person in there and in that position that can help us with that. But I just wanted to bring it, Operations Roads and Underground Services was the one area that they did want to see some improvements, and the other is Operation Parks and Environment. Thanks.
Okay, other questions, or Councillor McMath?
In this room where everybody is engaged and understands how a municipality is supposed to function, the majority of this community, and that's not a Sooke special, they don't understand that. So they want those pieces, they ask for those pieces, but we got to really, really talk about, if we're going to go here, how are you going to disseminate that information that doesn't demoralize and infuriate a community that doesn't understand, who's going through an international pandemic, that is financially struggling, that is mentally struggling, and you could justify anything on here. Like, I can justify anything I buy, but how, if we're going to tackle that route, there are more people that aren't in this room that don't know this is what we're looking at, and the first headline that's going to come out is Sooke Council, in the midst of an international pandemic, does a 20% tax increase. And people, I know how the Sooke News Mirror works. So there's a lot more conversation to be had, but there's a lot of bigger pieces that we're looking at here. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It's nothing set in stone, nothing's firm, but there's this, ideal thing. And yeah, everything we could greenlight, but there are big consequences as well beyond, a financial savings here, that it will be a struggle to communicate in an effective way to this community, because they're going to have a really hard time hearing it.
Yeah. Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, I think one of the most common complaints that we've heard over the last couple of years is the traffic issues on Highway 14 and how everything is backed up. And the reason that we're in this situation is because our infrastructure has been neglected over the years with all of the development that has happened and is scheduled to happen, we need to make these investments in infrastructure and get the cars off of the road, off of the main road, and have a bypass through Sooke. It's something that's been talked about since the 1930s, and it's never been implemented, and it's so long overdue that, that this is an area that I don't want to cut anything. I would like to see all of what Mr. Carter's proposing get done, because it should have been done years ago, and it's not going to get any cheaper. It's a tough pill to swallow, but this is where we are.
Okay, any other questions or comments? We'll move on. Councillor Bateman, then St. Pierre.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Carter, for that very full presentation. And I'd like to go back to Councillor Logan's original comment tonight around the Municipal Finance Authority and the potential to, I think you said 25% of something of that order, and municipal, a 10-year loan at 1.98% is the current rates. So that would maybe keep that tax hit, which we're beginning to think needs to happen, and we'll be a brave, bold council in an election year to go in and say, hey, go out, it's our ticket to ride.
I think it's the opposite. I think this is...
Well, yeah, maybe by properly explicating, as Mr. Carter does so well. I'm curious about your 5-year road program. Now, this year you came in at 300,000, right? So you managed to cut that in half. I think it was going to be 700 per year for 5 years. So is that an option? I know that doesn't hit the tax situation here, but it...
To your worship, through Councillor wrong way. Through your worship, to council, cutting the road program this year, like I've said, we're looking at 2024, rolling out a new $700,000 a year road program to get the paving back on track where it needs to be. For the next couple of years, will be utilized to take advantage of opportunity costs as well as facilitate some of the major paves on the corridor projects. We're looking at an opportunity cost this year that would utilize the $700,000. That would be to pave the rural roads that are abutting to and adjoining the ministry's project that could be sort of captured within their contract rates.
Are you going to be able to share your talking points tonight with us before we get the first read of this budget?
I can do that, yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Councillor St. Pierre.
I was more or less wanting the same information as Councillor Bateman in terms of the borrowing power that we do have and relatively low cost of credit, and whether or not that could be used for the capital projects, especially on the 5.71, I believe, percent that we're looking on capital. Is there any of that where that would be sensible? And I'm assuming that it's not possible, but I just want to confirm. We don't have any DCC money that we could use for any of this at this point in time. Just thought I'd ask.
Through your worship, I was just going to highlight that $1.7 million of DCC funds are being used for, if the Church Road project is supported for 2022 inclusion.
Okay. So we'll move off of this. Parks, I'll just ask if there's any questions. It's a minor ask for basically insurance and hazardous vegetation. RCMP,
I can just speak to this quickly, Your Worship. We do have a reserve fund established to be used for this cost, so it's just a matter of council's preference if we want to use everything needed for 2022, and then whatever's left, just use the rest of it for 2023 to cover the cost increases. This just had a placeholder of $300,000 in the budget, so just based on cutting, I can fund the whole overage with the reserve fund that we have available. There'll just be less funds available for 2023 budget.
but I don't understand why it says 90%.
Because that's our 90% contribution now. we go from 70 to 90% in
I know
March of
that.
2022.
But that hasn't been proven yet, and I was told that until it's proven by census, it rolls out afterwards, and we don't have that, so our population is 14,998. It is, because the census data, 97, we had someone move out. Because that has not been proven by census yet, and so I was told that when census proves it, it comes after, so why jump the gun until they prove it?
Just to confirm, Your Worship, this is prorated to start in April, because the federal budget goes till March, so the census is out in February, presumably so that they can make that decision for March, and then starting April 1st is when their annual year-end begins, April to March. So that's why it's prorated to start being included in 2022, unfortunately.
Rats. The other piece that I'll remind everyone of is that there is still an ask for 2 additional officers to bring forward. It's been a standing item. I met with the staff sergeant on this. We talked before, as many have, about the need to increase capacity in the RCMP to deal with our growing population, and to have 24/7 patrols requires 2 additional police officers. That is still a very valid ask. Their calls for service continue to climb. Their members are absorbing a lot of overtime. Having a 4-on, 4-off type of rotation will actually be maybe more attractive to some folks that live here that maybe work elsewhere, because they actually have a set schedule and they're not stuck at home with a pager and on an on-call basis. We're growing. All of our problems grow with us, as seen in the headlines. So to ignore that, I think there is still, we as local governments is responsible for community safety. There is still a need for 2 more officers, and we need to diligently find a way to fund that. It's reality. Don't like that one either, but it's just, again, it's another challenge that we have to face. Okay, fire.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. The Fire Department requests for 2022 also include the emergency program, which are the top 2 lines on that Excel sheet there. There's a bunch of small items in here that you'll notice in the sort of $2,000 to $5,000 range. Those are a lot of reallocations within the existing budget to ensure they're more accurately tracked within the budget. There's a few items there that were removed during COVID times and that now are coming back into play, namely the annual exercise for the emergency program, and then the emergency program and fire department annual recognition event, which has been, the last time it was hosted was in 2019. The most significant increases for the 2022 budget asks are relating to personnel. Our members are by far our greatest resource, and ensuring that we're not only resourcing them and funding them appropriately, but we need to ensure that we have the appropriate resources in place to be able to function as an emergency response agency. Our focus is on a very outward focused delivery model out in the community, and ensuring that our equipment and apparatus are functioning and able to respond at a moment's notice, and that's most typically addressed through personnel, ensuring that we have people available, people that are trained and qualified, and that we have people that are actually available to respond to those calls. The most significant line that you'll see there is the paid-on-call the paid-on-call compensation program. The $99,000 increase there as the final implementation of a full paid-on-call program for the non-career members. So this is for members who previously were known as volunteer members, but have transitioned into a paid-on-call response model. This model sees paid-on-call members be compensated for hours actually worked. So hours worked would include approved training, so training that's been coordinated, established, set up, and scheduled by the fire department, and then on emergency call response. That $99,000 increase over 2021 relates to a $55,000 increase from what was originally requested in the 5-year financial plan for 2022. The calculation used for this increase is based on the 2019, 2020, and 2021 year-to-date numbers for training and response. The $199,000 total is sitting at the top end of what we expect would actually be billed as far as training hours and emergency call response goes. There is a lot of unknowns built into a paid-on-call model as far as how many people we'll have in the organization, how many responses we'll have from those members, and then how available they are to participate in the training. If we look at the bare minimum requirements to maintain the acceptable skill sets within the fire department established through the Office of the Fire Commissioner Playbook training standards, departmental operational guidelines, we're looking at about a $90,000 cost just on training alone for our current members where we sit right now. Our current membership is lower than where we would like it, and we hope that we'll be able to improve that number, but we are sitting at about $90,000 just to hit what we consider a minimum requirement to remain as an active member in our organization. The typical call response has been sitting between $60,000 and $70,000 a year for our paid-on-call members. So using a bare minimum requirement on current numbers and what we compensate our members on emergency response, we're sitting at $160,000 in that line. To be clear, we don't encourage our members to meet a bare minimum requirement, and we not only encourage, but we expect our members to aim a little bit higher. We have minimum requirements in place to ensure that they are safely operating on scene, not only for the safety of the public, but for the safety of themselves and the people that they're working alongside. So we do not use that minimum hour requirement as the expected budget number. We use the traditional numbers on what we're seeing our members contribute. The $199,000 again is on the higher end, so that is what we would expect to see if we had members consistently attending their training and then having an emergency response that is slightly better than what we're seeing in 2020 and 2021. The next item that we have that has some reasonable significance to it as far as a cost increase would be for CREST. A few of these costs here are a bit out of our hands. CREST has control of our radios, so this is our portable radios that we carry with us and our mobile radios that are on our trucks. This increase here is due to an increase in radios that we've had for portable radios, and those portable radios include the emergency program, our bylaw officers, as well as the fire department. The acquisition of new radios for the fire department and emergency program is why we're seeing the increase over 2021. The reasoning behind these increases is that we are transitioning our radio usage to be at an industry standard, where we're using a radio channel that has better penetration, and the construction that we're seeing being built in Sooke, the introduction of parkades, larger buildings, has caused our previous methods of communicating over the radios to be quite challenging, and we lose those communications. So necessitating those changes has required us to acquire additional radios, and being able to communicate on scene has resulted in this increase. The next item that we have is our health screening. So we've been very fortunate in 2020 and 2021 that we've had the First Responder Cardiology Research Education Early Detection Program, which was a donation that was made to this provincial program, and Sooke was fortunate to be selected as one of those departments that they would come out to and screen our members. This is specifically for cardiovascular disease, which is the leading cause of death for on-duty firefighters, resulting in about 45% of our on-duty fatalities for firefighters. The objective of this program is to screen our members and see if there's any underlying health conditions. essentially all firefighter deaths due to CBD has been due to an underlying undiagnosed condition. So we're trying to stay ahead of that and avoid putting our members into situations that we can detect early and then seek treatment for them. There are a few items that you'll notice in there that are reductions from the 2021 budget. That's resulting in about $30,000 reductions. But again, there is a number of items there that are reallocation of funding, moving them to more appropriate lines from where they've traditionally been kept. And then there are a few items in there that we see as the cost of doing business, for lack of a better word, where we see janitorial costs, insurance premiums, where we have ICBC costs that are increasing. The item here that's not included in these asks are the non-market growth for a firefighter position in 2022. And again, the majority of this 2022 budget ask is focused around our career and paid on-call membership. Moving forward, we do have opportunities that exist that are unanticipated funding sources. Specifically for 2021 is the wildfire response, where we've had, beginning of July, we had crews out until the third week in August. The funding that is returned back to the district from the province is in excess of what the costs are. So once we pay out our staffing costs, all the apparatus costs, the district is left with fairly significant revenue from those deployments. The opportunities that exist here for the district and the fire department would be to use those funds to address some current debt servicing that exists, and to support future funding of reserve accounts for those future capital needs where we have significant capital costs that come up with apparatus replacement.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief. So, questions? Like every other department, I mean, when you hear from every department, I mean, we appreciate why you've put this forward, which is why we're going to send it back to you a bit more. But as everyone knows, our community hits wildfire every year. We need a trained operation to be in response to that, not just in summer, but with the flooding that happens on our roadways. It's not easy to attract volunteers. They have to be trained and willing to train regularly. You can't just have someone that wants to be a firefighter and shows up randomly every 6 months. This is a team that needs to rely heavily on the person standing behind them, and everyone needs to know what they're doing at all times. So it's not just, oh, we'll come in and do X. Like, no, you have to be ready to go all the time. Our department also goes to deal with wildfires. On their summer vacation, they go and fight the wildfires that are spreading across BC, and then they come back and continue on the work that they're doing in our municipality. And the work they're doing is awful sometimes. They're on the roadways saving lives, trying to, in the middle of the night, away from their families, leaving their families concerned, and staying with those impacted until others show up. So I can certainly appreciate why this is here. Yes, Councillor Logans.
I have a question through you to our acting chief. This is not a fun question, but I have to ask it. The paid on call was supposed to be our investment in recruitment and retention, and it looks like that's not quite working out the way we thought it was. It's costing more than we thought. It's not bringing in as many volunteers potentially. Going forward, are we going to be looking at other ways to fund recruitment and retention? Are there going to be, or perhaps are there discussions around other budget asks that we may see in coming years to bring in more firefighters, or volunteer firefighters specifically?
Through your worship, The current model of a paid-on-call program is new to Sooke, and it's not new to firefighting. The position we're in right now is that we're pretty late to the game. The evolution of the fire service should have seen a paid-on-call program implemented earlier and using the time that we're in now to evolve to the next phase of what service delivery looks like. What that looks like, I'm not going to guess what that looks like. It certainly relies a lot on the direction of the organization, and we have a master plan that is pending, and we expect to see in the next couple months. We have a new fire chief that is starting in 2 weeks from today. Those pieces coming together, we're not going to be staying the course that we've been on for the last several decades of having a reliance on members to drop everything that they're doing, and those demographics have changed. The members, the expectations of those members has changed significantly, and it is unfair to pin the emergency response capabilities of a growing municipality onto a person who may be working a few jobs, or their spouse is working a job and they've got young kids at home. There needs to be relief there. I anticipate that the future of a paid-on-call program will continue to exist. The reliance of the current on the current model will be what's changing. The future of the funding for the paid-on-call program, I can see that changing, where the reliance on those current members starts to become reduced, and that funding gets reallocated into a different delivery model. The expectation that we have on our members is high, certainly. Our members, by and large, deliver on those expectations every year, every day, in fact. But there is changes coming, and I think that that does require creativity, as Councillor St. Pierre had mentioned earlier. There are some moving parts to be able to evolve with our changing demographic in our community, and trying to force the current model. I would agree that it is not currently working as it may have 10, 15 years ago. That said, I think that there is some time here where we can make the right decisions, not just for the members, but for what's our primary responsibility is delivery of service to the community. But I do anticipate that there will be some changes here. What is for sure is that we will continue to rely on our community members to be serving this community. Those expectations may be what changes, though, but I can't see a time in the medium term to long term where we don't rely on a paid-on-call model. But it may be in a supplementary role, or it may be in a modification of how they currently deliver services.
Thank you, and I guess like further to that, and I don't expect an answer tonight for this question, and hopefully it might come out a bit more in the master plan, but is that enough? Like, I support this paid-on-call system, but is it going to accomplish what is it just accomplishing what we should have accomplished years ago, or are we actually moving in a direction we should be? And what does that look like? But I don't know. You might not be able to answer.
Yeah, and again, quickly on it, and I will not have all the answers, and yeah, my magic 8 ball is not working right now. But certainly the effect of implementation of a paid-on-call program is a recognition piece for those members to be compensated for work that they're actually doing. There is no compensation if work's not completed. So this is actual boots on the ground work being done, and compensating at a level that is about 75% of the firefighting industry standard rate. So it's not full rates, but it is recognition for compensating people for work actually completed, and the work that they're doing, they're trained and qualified for. So it's not like they're completing work that they're untrained, unqualified for. They are capable of performing the work. But certainly, there are some gaps in that model, and going forward, it will be a priority for the organization going forward to ensure that we are able to deliver on the service, which has its challenges right now with a partial implementation of a paid-on-call program to ensure we have enough people responding to calls.
Councillor McMath?
In following the same thread, are you also looking into like a hiring legacy program as an incentivization for volunteers? Because if there is a possibility to move up to a full-time career firefighter within a department, typically those departments like Langford see a much higher success rate for retention because those members stay in that pool because there's a high chance that they'll be hired. That's one piece, not for now maybe, but through your worship to Chief Norris Jones, how many apparatuses do we currently still have outstanding payments on?
Through your worship to Councillor McMath, the fire department master plan is to include a long-term staffing plan included in that. My expectation is that that staffing plan will include permanent positions in there, and certainly departments that have long-term staffing plans in place have a much easier time recruiting their membership. Typically, those departments would be either hiring internally or the members that are already with that organization have had an opportunity to present themselves to management in preparation of a hiring potential. So certainly those opportunities in other departments have yielded pretty strong results when those hiring plans are in place. And speaking to the current debt servicing, I'm going to lean on Ms. Gray for this.
Through your worship, there's currently 3 outstanding debts for fire apparatus. The ladder truck, which expires or matures in 2027, the water tender, which matures in 2024, that was a 5-year equipment loan we took out for that one, and then the recent purchase of engine 1, which was borrowed in 2 different borrowings based on the timing of when the truck was ready, and deposits that needed to be made. So both of those equipment loans expire in 2025.
Punch my laptop. Just to follow up, what are we paying in, what is the word I'm looking for? Thank you.
Principal and interest.
Thank you.
Through your worship, I can have that information at the next council meeting. I can start digging it up here, but in the interest of time, I don't have that on my fingertips right now. So I can definitely gather that information for you.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Or Councillor St. Pierre?
I'm just curious, through your worship to our chief, I'm just curious about the master plan, the firefighter master plan, because it sounds like it's going to go fair ways into potential retention strategies. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor St. Pierre, I'm not anticipating specific strategies for recruitment or retention. What I am anticipating is a recommendation that will direct staff in the organization to be coming up with a retention and recruitment plan that would be beyond what is currently doing. It would be the identification of a current system that needs work, and then pushing it back to the organization to be looking at alternatives. I suspect that the specifics of a precise plan won't exist in the fire department master plan, but simply the identification of a challenge and an issue that exists and the need to address that.
Thank you. I was asking because I think that retention piece and finding some new solutions are very much needed. One of the things that's come to mind, obviously, is that at this point in time, quality of life tends to be a lot more important if someone's going to volunteer. Social connection seems to be a lot more important if people are going to volunteer. So I'm curious about something that you said before, which is that assets that are at this point being used for paid on call might at some later point be reallocated towards an evolving solution. Do you see the possibility of monies that might be set aside at this point for paid on call being used, for example, for extended medical or dental or family passes to Sea Park so that volunteer firefighters can all go to the pool together, or, you know, that type of thing. Is that the sort of thing, sort of evolution that we can contemplate or that might be considered?
Through your worship, absolutely. One of the benefits of our current structure in our organization is the paid-on-call members are represented through their association. The association is currently in the process of developing a retention program for their members. The structure of that association ensures that the solicitation of feedback from the members on what's important to those members, what's important to their families, and why they're a part of the organization, that opportunity exists for them to ensure that that what's important for their families is able to be not only brought up internally, but able to come forward to management through the CAO's office as well. So I am quite confident that the association has the best interest of their members in mind, and has the avenues to be able to bring those forward and evolve with the organization and ensure that what matters to our members and what the mandate of the association to be around retention to ensure that that's able to be met. I'm confident in their ability to do that, and I'm confident in the fire department and the administration of the municipality to be able to address those and continue to evolve and hopefully provide services to our members that are relevant and meaningful and encourages them to not only join but to stay in our organization.
If I can kind of reiterate, what I'm hearing is that resources that are made available at this point in time for a paid-on-call system, which hasn't had the time to prove itself, especially during the current pandemic, could potentially be used in the future for benefits for any number of other strategies that could be effective on retention.
Certainly, the funding that exists for the paid-on-call program, that amount of money that exists in this 2022 ask, should the expectations of our members change as far as training or call attendance requirements, the assumption would be that that would leave a surplus of funding that if directed and supported, could be reallocated, certainly.
Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, through you to the chief. Like Mr. Carter, who made some painful cuts, he suggested, is there anything on your seemingly essential list here that you could live without?
From this current list here, the only item that I would look to potentially to not do or look to do on a rotating cycle would be the health screening for the cardiovascular disease. There is a potential that that may receive funding in 2022. We're not expecting it, but there is that potential. But I would look at cycling that to every second year. Outside of this list, is I believe Councillor McMath was alluding to, some of our debt servicing, which are ongoing costs, I think has opportunity to address those where we are paying some significant interest rates on our large apparatus, and getting out of those, I think would have a more meaningful impact to us. From this current list, cardiovascular screening. Beyond that, I would request the opportunity to come back, looking at the entire fire department budget, and come back and see where there's opportunities there.
I was also interested in that volunteer mechanic service. I'm wondering, can you identify the kind of anticipated cost savings by working with your own crew?
Certainly. So we previously had a fire department mechanic that was with us for a number of years, and unfortunately they passed. And when they passed, we moved everything to contracted services and moving all of our apparatus maintenance and repairs outside. Since that time, we've been fortunate that a local resident has agreed to service, as a ticketed heavy-duty mechanic, to service our large apparatus and not only deal with maintenance and repairs, but do a bunch of preventative maintenance, which they're able to do typically on Wednesdays right now, on about an 8.5-hour day right now. What the request in 2022 is to fund that position, or fund that person, sorry, to pay them at the paid-on-call firefighter rate for 9 hours a day each week of the year. That's currently what they're doing. So it's looking to fund them the same as what we're requesting for our firefighters. But the beneficial end of that is that we aren't required to send a lot of our regular maintenance and minor repairs out to the heavy-duty mechanics in various shops, some locally, but many of them in town, which was previously done through the City of Victoria, and then at some of the other facilities in Central Saanich. So I can certainly do some cost comparables for you for what we haven't had to send out that we would have previously, but there is significant savings there beyond what the costs of that position are.
Okay, anything else? No? Okay, so staffing.
Through your worship, just wanted to highlight a couple things here and then possibly turn it over to staff if council has further questions about the non-market change asks or anything else. I just wanted to highlight the first couple lines in the budget, which is why I kind of cringe when the mayor's like, I only want 3.5% increase. The staffing costs alone for the current staff are 3.2%. So, and that's just related to, the first line here, the 1.84% is just for current staff. It's annual increases per QP agreements, fire agreements, exempt staff, et cetera. And with that, CPP goes up, pension contributions go up, as well. CPP is going up just anyways as part of the federal program. So it's just absorbing those costs. We now have the employer health tax, which is fully implemented, so those costs will always increase based on salaries. As well, I just wanted to highlight, partway through the year, last year, council supported adding a new additional position on top of the 3 non-market change positions, which was an approving officer. So that position now needs to be funded in the budget going forward. And as well absorbed, bumping up to the current staff cost increase line. This is the line where Council St. Pierre, you will find additional costs for any positions that we prorated and now are fully being funded for 12 months. So those costs would be absorbed in there because the similar thing happened last year for the non-market change positions. They're prorated for an estimated start date. So now there will be the extra few months that are absorbed in there. So there has been a request from Parks for some additional laborers based on, again, some hiring decisions that occurred this year with the hiring of a contractor, which is awesome and saves us a lot of money. Unfortunately, it took the budget away from the Parks laborers budget to help fund that position, as it wasn't a dedicated position at the time. And for the non-market change, for the 3 positions, even with prorating them to a March start date, there is still a slight overage based on the current non-market change budget. So the 3 positions, as we've stated, would be one in engineering, a manager in planning, and a firefighter. So if council would like to talk about any of those positions at all, staff are happy to answer any questions.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Engineer, firefighter, and?
Manager of engineering, manager of planning, and a firefighter.
Okay.
Are the 3 positions included, at least right now. And there's an additional request for additional parks labor budget over and above the non-market positions.
Okay.
Labor, so it's a pool of money, so they hire auxiliary staff, so it's just a pool of funds available to them.
Okay, questions on the, Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, to our finance, our non-market funds $268,000, and you said that wouldn't be enough to cover the 3 positions? Do you know, what is the difference between how much overage is? Maybe I have it in front of me, I'm looking at something else at the moment.
43,400 is the overage between the non-market and the estimated budget, yes.
Thank you.
And so this revenue is, as we grow, the growth should cover the new positions. And so I appreciate how that is applicable to firefighter or police officer or engineering. I don't understand it with planning, though. Can I get a bit more information on that? Why we would need a manager of planning?
So currently within the planning department, all current and long-range planning is directed through the Director of Planning and Development. And as we're seeing an increase of development applications and rezoning and the like, there's still a need to handle both the day-to-day planning aspects as well as all of the long-range planning items that are continually developing throughout the planning process. So the OCP draft has identified a lot of long-term items, which would then populate over the long haul all the planning that needs to keep pace with the development and other policy items that are arising from other departments. So it's making sure that there's proper coordination throughout the organization with all aspects of planning and development and community growth as a whole.
Okay. I guess one would argue if you want to slow down development is, you would start, there's a mechanism to do that. Councillor St. Pierre?
Just a comment on Mr. Palo's answer. My understanding is that the manager of planning would answer emails from the community, deal with day-to-day operations, and allow the director of planning to actually operationalize the OCP into policy and make policy adjustments so that we could potentially realize the vision of the OCP, among other things. So I think that's, if I'm not mistaken.
No, and I get that as well. I just, with the OCP still in draft form, I'm sort of, okay, let's adopt an OCP and policy implementation will follow. There's a zoning bylaw that needs to catch up because there's a lot of problems in the zoning bylaw. So I just at a point where a lot of it to me is in the zoning bylaw, not quite as with the policy implementation pieces of the draft OCP, because there's other pieces that we're going to need to address with. Okay, it's still a draft, right? It's going to remain that way, until it's actually adopted. So there's still more work to be done. So that's where I'm just wondering, having a person there, it may be early, I could be wrong though, but that's where I'm asking that too. Okay. I'm just saying what I'm thinking, so when we send this back to you, you get it, because if I just say nothing, you'll be like, I have no idea what that expression meant.
Yeah, so currently in terms of capacity with what we're working at, we're at a maximum point, and with the items that are going to be arising out of the OCP, whether they're in the current draft form now or through the revisions that we'll receive following the summary report, the ability to action them will continuously become challenging as we continue to process the day-to-day aspects and how much of an opportunity we'll have to be able to have the resources available in the department to then follow through on those long-range planning items. And so the objective would ultimately be keeping on pace with all the active applications that come in, which we never know year over year what the anticipated increase is going to be. Certainly the trend right now through the quarterly reporting has shown that it's just continuing and not going to be stopping. So that will certainly put a lot on the current staff, as well as all the anticipated action items for the actual long-range planning that will need to follow to support all of the day-to-day development that will be occurring.
Okay, my other question is, where does everybody fit into the building?
There is a plan. In the bullpen that's back in the planning and development operations area, my understanding is the plotter that is along the one wall will be moved, and we can create 2 more workstations there. The firefighter obviously would be in the fire station.
Okay. Councillor Bateman?
So yeah, I'm sitting here a little stunned because I don't know where we're going to, where's the wiggle room in this budget. So I'm curious, through you to Mr. Palo, are you close to an ideal staff complement? Will this be the final piece in the puzzle?
There's increased activity, as we've seen with the quarterly reporting. So I guess there's two pieces to what we're working on, and CAO McInnes had addressed the piece with the manager of planning and the coordination team, but then there's always the ongoing increase of application review and processing, and that's the other component as well that we're actively monitoring. And so currently right now with the staff that we have, if there's to be continual increase on that side, that's a component that we have to ensure that what is the level of service that we're expecting to deliver to applicants and the public as a whole, because that's always a key piece that we're monitoring at the same time.
So I see you have made some great progress this year in terms of residential building permit approvals. You know, you've cut, what is it, 36% improvement, 43 days versus 68 as it used to be. So great progress there. And I understand, you might explain this to me, the provincial government is lobbying for quicker development approvals. So how does that play out in terms of pressure on your department?
There's obviously certain expectations that applicants and the public as a whole will seek based on these. It's still information that needs to be further clarified from the provincial government as to how we can actually achieve those. A lot of what they mentioned were just existing aspects within the Local Government Act, but merely reworded, such as the public hearing processes. We already have that ability, but it's just tweaking of words that has occurred in the proposed draft. So a lot of that is just going to be continuously looking at how through the development process review we can also utilize that aspect to deliver. Our main challenge is always continuously knowledge sharing and educating applicants on what requirements are needed through their application process, and that continues to be a challenging point for us with trying to maintain fast processing, because we can do our review, but it's the amount of time then afterwards where the response is given back to the applicant and how long they're able to turn their revisions around and get it back into our office. So it's always that back and forth aspect of that process.
Other questions? Okay, we're sort of, the one thing though that, where I hear that we're increasing in activity all the time, but then the revenue from building permit is decreased? That's where what's that all about?
It's the opposite. It's showing an increase in revenue, it's going up, so it's reducing the overall tax increase.
Oh, I
So it's
see.
yeah, debit credit kind of reversal. So yes,
it.
the revenue's coming from 500,000 to 650,000. At least for right now, I can look at this closer with Mr. Paolo and potentially bump it up a little more based on potential upcoming development. Just, that's the initial proposal.
No, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. That, it's just, yeah, okay, I get it. I get the math, I get the brackets, okay. Okay, so we've sat here for 3 hours and we've heard a lot of information. We did say that we would be sending this back to staff, so I want to do a check-in with council on that. And when we say send it back, what are you thinking? Because that is why I've been commenting, because, so you hear obviously where I'm at. So comments, Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick clarification. I did ask the Climate Action Committee to give me some flushing out of the kickoff campaign. I see it is here, and I did miss that. I did read it a couple of weeks ago, but I had forgotten about it, so thank you. I would like to, I heard everybody here, and from what I hear, I said, well, 17.5, we're lucky to have it that low. But of course, we can't do that. And there's going to have to be some give and take here. So each department, and there's three big ones, and we have to find some middle ground. And I don't know what to give you in the way of a percentage, but I never did think 3.5 or 5% was realistic from what I've been seeing. But 17 is just out to lunch. We just can't do that. And, I'm sorry if it's, everybody is very, very, very passionate about what they were speaking about tonight, and some things that I am, but others are on other things. So I'm not sure what they come back with, but come back with something less than 17.5%.
Okay, other councillors? Thank you, Councillor St. Pierre.
Yes, ditto. I will also ask, obviously, this is not all the information. This is not all the numbers. These are the numbers in terms of the increases, and we don't actually, at least in what I'm seeing here, have the rest of the operational budgets and so on and so forth. I'd be interested in what Councillor Beddoes was asking. Just, obviously, feel free to look at the rest of the budget, not just what's actually here in terms of increases. What I'm seeing a lot of here in terms of increases is just cost of living increases. I mean, a lot of it is, the piddly stuff is basically cost of photocopying has gone up, the cost of this has gone up, and given that we had, I think, the better part of a decade with 0% increases, there's just not a lot of fat to trim. And so I guess I'm asking for the impossible, sorry, but if you have to make those tough calls, if you have to choose to not put the bottom on a culvert, which I don't recommend, and I don't know if I can support that really, what's it going to be? Help us out, because you're the guys to do it. Let us know which bottoms you want to drop out of the culverts.
Other councillors? Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, I guess I don't really have anything to add. I think Councillor Beddoes and St. Pierre have kind of captured my sentiments. Look at what can we realistically cut out, because I think everything that we've heard about is important, and I'd love to say just, yeah, I'd like to be able to cut a check for it all, but I'm not in that position, so we need to trim it down a bit somewhere.
Councillor Loggins?
I disagree with everyone at this table.
We haven't all spoken.
So far. Staff have done an incredible job of cutting this down. There are still obviously a couple of things that could come out here and there, but that's not going to make the cuts that we want to see, and I think that this is a political decision and not a staff decision. I don't think that sending this back to staff, I mean, yes, we do, I agree we have to send it back to staff and get, like, perhaps the things that could be cut out as discussed tonight, but it's not going to bring us anywhere near where we want to be, and I think that it's political decisions that need to be made, and not just us passing the buck to someone else who might know more about their department than we do. There's a lot that needs to get done, and we really do, as staff mentioned, need to make tough decisions instead of just passing it back and forth.
Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, so I'll just reiterate the MFA as an option to at least cover some of this, and to remember that this is a 5-year financial plan, and that maybe a few of these things can be integrated over the next 5 years, as opposed to all in one fell swoop. Because given, these cost of living increases at 4.4% or up to 5%, this is hitting people on every level that they're living. Their food basket price is rising, and those on fixed incomes, this whole matter. So I agree that so much of what is presented here is trimmed and logical and required. As Councillor Lajeunesse says, it'd be great to just write that check. And those grant writers are so critical in helping that happen too. So I really look forward to what comes next.
Councillor McMath?
I'm just really struggling. It's not about passing the buck. I think it's going back to staff asking for a triage, because we aren't the experts, and I do want that from them. Like, of course, you could justify every single item on there, but like I said, there are consequences to throwing out a 20% tax increase to an emotionally, mentally taxed, and financially taxed community already right now. And one of the things I struggle with is not that long ago we had said during one of the higher tax increases that we were going to find ways to fold positions in that wouldn't be such a hit to the community, and by doing these pieces going forward in the future, the tax increase wouldn't be so hard. And the more we go through it, we are so handcuffed by previously made poor choices. So it's just it's a hard spot to be in right now. Like I'm so split. I'm having a tough time because when we've made a statement that this is it, this is going to be the biggest one, and from here on out, we've got it dialed, and now as we go through, no, we don't, but we're still so cuffed by the past that it's going to hit the community so hard, and the community doesn't see it as this council from this time made this choice, and that's why we're doing that. It's just the District of Sooke is roasting us, and I have really big concerns about how you're going to communicate this in a way that's going to be absorbed by the majority of the community to justify. Like, we all sitting here, we understand, we've gone through it. Yeah, of course that makes sense. It's going to be such a difficult uphill battle trying to get this community on the same page. And so it's not about passing the buck, but it's also that there are other consequences that you can't put down on paper that are going to come from this. And I don't care what the Sooke News Mirror writes, but I do care about the emotional health of this community. And so I'm a little stuck right now.
So I am stuck with you, Councillor McMath, because I hear the challenges that families and individuals and seniors face every day. I see it in the grocery store, in the cost of food. Where I'm at with this, though, is I agree, staff to triage. Like, really, is this the budget you would have presented to us? I don't think so, because we asked you to put everything into it. So I would like to see more of what would you have presented, really? Like, there was a reluctance when we said that, and now suddenly we're like, of course everything is justifiable, because there's very valid reasons behind all of it. But really, is this the budget you want to present to us in our final year working together? So that, and you don't have to answer it today. I'm just sharing that, okay, is that where we're at? I might rethink my decisions in the future. The second piece to that is we are finishing up our term. And so realistically for me, it's the case of, if we put this all in here, can you realistically deliver on all of it? Sometimes we see projects in the budget that don't advance. They roll forward year after year for good reasons. Other things come up sometimes. Pandemic happens, province does X, and we have to pivot. How much pivot room is in this? Should a different opportunity arise? Is there space for that? And then it's the case of, we didn't do X, Y, and Z because this came along. But meanwhile, people are struggling at the bank. Is it necessary to start something new at a time when we are winding up? And that's where it's on the ground. Or maybe some things should be, when a new council is welcomed in, here's what council finished, and here's where we think you should begin, as opposed to, here's where you need to keep carrying on over and over. I've sat through 4 terms of that, and it's like, wow, this thing again, right? Because it's been there for a long time, and you kind of forget about it, and then it creeps up again. I totally appreciate synergies. We've done that before in the past, where nothing is worse than we go and pave a road and then Fortis digs it up, or another entity, we missed the opportunity to partner, and now we're digging up their work. So I get that. When you hear of a synergy, there is good reason to take advantage of that. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think it's the case where, we do need to mark the landing and finish what we started. And then I think, okay, what is the next project to leash out on? Because the engagement's going to be on an election. I can say this with experience. It's not going to be go online and X. It's like, candidate, what have you done? What have you done with that 18% or that whatever? And that is what falls in the online form. And that is the question that's asked. Or, and we've seen it in this town. Throw out everyone and bring in everyone new, and then we're going to undo everything. And then it just halts the community and sets us back. So that's where it's time to be strategic, really. And that's all I sort of have. But everything goes up, but for pensioners or those without a pension on the CPP and OAS, not much. Not much comes their way. Those that have a pension outside, different story perhaps, but many of our seniors that live on just that, that's it. Singles without children don't qualify for the ability to defer. Home time owners that don't have equity can't defer. So I'm thinking of those people, and we don't hear from them because they have a lot going on. Managing children and childcare and doing the best they can with what they have. So will they come to council and vulnerably state their situation? No. But they appreciate it when we take the time to talk to them out on the street. That's our job, that's my job, is to hear those stories, and I don't name them because it's private. So we know that, you know, that is the reality. It's great for those that have the ability to defer whatever, that have, you know, equity to live on, that have dual incomes. That's great with no overhead. That's lovely. That's not the reality for everyone. So how do they stay in their home and keep their home? And still have the ability to send their kids to Sea Park for X, Y, and Z, you know? So it's all of that. And it's a tough ask. But at the end of the day, I also want to see the budget that you would rather, like, what is the budget you would, or is this it? So that's, you know, because I saw a bit of a shock reaction when we said dump it all in. So now for us to say, okay, there's no way, you know, that would be I don't think that's a fair statement that our staff delivered this budget, because I don't feel it was the budget you were going to bring to us in the first place. We said put it all in there, and for transparency, we can see where things come out and the rationale why. So that's where I'm at. Okay, so motion then, that council directs staff to continue refining the budget. Councillor McMath?
On that same thread, one of the pieces that I loved was Mr. Carter showcasing this is a substantial piece of the upcoming taxation. However, it would save this amount of money. So having those pieces from all the departments would be spectacular, because just like you said, it's when you're in the grocery store and you're like, why did you do this? One of the pieces that I'm looking for is, yeah, we did that, and that was a significant increase, but this is why, because it's going to save you $50 million later. So that, as long as I have that, I'm more comfortable hitting a higher number, because I can justify later it's going to soften as we grow.
Mr. McInnes?
But that's only if that project goes ahead. If that project doesn't go ahead, Throop Road in this case, then it's just another cost to us.
Okay.
Really, that's what we're asking, you know, and that was the exercise at the last meeting was, you know, more high level departmentally, where would council like to see us spend more or possibly spend less? And we didn't get to that exercise at the last meeting, but really that's what we were asking for, just from a service level perspective. What are you hearing from constituents? Where are you hearing the pressure points? Because you guys get the same emails that I get every day. We know what are, you know, the most frustrating pieces of living in Sooke today. So where should we spend more money? And are there areas where we can maybe spend less money? And, you know, we're catching up in Sooke right now. We're catching up in everything. Personnel, infrastructure, trying to introduce new lines of service, shoehorn them into a very tough budget. But really, that was the piece. You know, we can stretch things out for a long, long time. You know, we don't have to implement the transportation master plan over a 10-year period. We can stretch it out over a longer term. But there are consequences to that as well. So yeah, we need to find, you know, the best balance and go for it. And part of the, you know, what we manager planning, for example, the structure that we have, directors and then another level managers. And really what we want to do is once the current budget is approved, we want to hand that off to the managers to implement that budget. And directors, we really want to work on having a much more defined and informed years 2 through 5 in the 5-year financial plan. So that's the model that I'm trying to resource and get in place. We may not get there this year, but that really is, on the long-term piece, making sure that there's resources so our directors are not in the day-to-day stuff up to our elbows, but really have the ability to look in the out years in the 5-year financial plan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McInnes. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, just, our CAO alluded to through your worship, but the study we put out when we went out and talked to the public about where they want where their dollars spent, they were pretty clear. Roads and sewers and parks and environment were the only two that want us to spend more. So certainly go away with that in mind, that we represent the community, and the community has said those are areas that they wanted to increase. So I'm looking for an increase in those areas. And what I found out today, those are the two main areas that you have indicated the increase, some very large ones. And I do appreciate that we're catching up. We're catching up of 20 years of trying to build a community that's growing in leaps and bounds, and the infrastructure hasn't. And unfortunately, it's caught up with us. But we've got to find a way to manage it and maybe put it over a little bit more of a time frame than 1 year. But it's a tough road, and it's tough for you, it's tough for us. But we've got to move ahead and get something for the public, and soon. So thanks for your efforts. You've done a good job of explaining yourselves, and it's been an eye-opener for me. Thanks.
Okay, so looking, yep.
Yeah, just a very quick one in relation to what Councillor Beddoes said, and that was a good survey, but it's just key point here is response rates are not statistically significant is the final words of this document. So, yeah, just that point. Good.
Councillor St. Pierre?
Just wondering if there might be an appetite. One of the things that I remember when the master plan for the roads came in, the transportation master plan, was just that there was a cost attached, and that doing it sooner was likely better than doing it later. And one of the things that we discussed very briefly, and I don't think it was ever brought up in council, but it was certainly bandied about, was the idea of a referendum to actually see if the public was interested. Now, as Councillor Beddoes has pointed out, the public is very interested in getting our roads in. And it strikes me that this is one of those opportunities to actually go to the public with a referendum and say, are you interested in getting the roads in? We've got a transportation master plan. So I would like to actually have a motion to that effect, something that could actually move this particular notion forward.
Okay, I think it's premature for that. I don't know. It's up to you to move it, but I just hear from Mr. McInnes.
Please.
Yeah, we're not ready for that. We are ready, and we're modeling that stuff. The Church Road roundabout is the big ticket item this year. We are laser focused on getting the through all the way down to West Coast Road, Ella Beach. We're focused on that piece, and you can anticipate a major borrowing ask in the 5-year financial plan. But to do it for a $3.1 million project this year does not make any sense.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. Okay, so a proposed motion could be that council directs staff to continue refining the budget.
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Beddoes has moved, Councillor St. Pierre seconded. Anything to add on the motion, Councillor Beddoes?
No, I've just about, numbers are coming out of my head now, I'm getting worried.
Yeah, Councillor St. Pierre. Anyone else? No? Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. And anyone opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, so on that note, that brings us to the end of our agenda, I believe. Right? Yes. No new business, and so a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor McMath. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone, for being with us tonight for the whole evening, and those online as well. Stay safe, everyone.